pretty much change our quorum. We wanted to make that announcement right now before we approve the agenda, so we can look at what's the most important things we can talk about first. And also we want to honor the people that have traveled here, that are here specifically, like Brandon from SGM, that we deal with those kind of things right out of the gate instead of leaving them until the very end. So those are, that's the rationale for the two of us. If he's insisting on a hard stop tonight, we'd like to give it a try.
Sure. All right, sounds good. So then the next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. So we probably need to shuffle things around a little bit. So in speaking with staff earlier today, number 6, 7, 8, and 9 are and the disbursements are things we absolutely need to get to. And then the mayor's report, since I have a grant that I would like to write, but its deadline is due before the next date, the next meeting, so that needs to get approved at that point too.
And we have a guest, Brandon.
Right. Well, he's part of the SGM thing, the hydro, JDS hydro.
Okay, that'll be number 9.
That would be number 9. All right. So can I get a motion to accept the agenda, putting? Go for it, Dave.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we change the order of the meeting and start with the mayor's report. That would be agenda item 3. Then we move to agenda item 6, which would be the vacated trustee seat, and agenda item 7, which would be trustee meeting policy and procedure modifications, presentation of JDS Hydro progress report, and agenda item 9, presentation of JDS Hydro and SGM engineering task list. Then we will continue after that doing disbursements, then move to agenda items 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13 as time permits.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from the board? Yeah.
Just other than, I think we need to speak up. I don't think the people in the back can.
Oh, can you hear?
No, we could not.
Okay, so you need to speak louder.
Should I do it over?
No.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
I wanted to ask to have something removed from the agenda.
Sure. Wow.
And it is number 13, or no, it's not, I'm sorry. Yes, 13, sorry.
Okay.
We probably wouldn't get to it anyway,
Right.
but I want to bring it up because to me, it's going to also have an influence on when we discuss redoing the meetings. This is one of those items that there's nothing on the agenda to explain why this is coming back when we all voted unanimously to continue with the moratorium back on January 25th, 6 weeks ago. There's nothing in here that explains why it's back. And my point is that leaves, some people obviously know why it's coming back, but I don't. And it leaves us that we are going to be spending a lot of time catching us all up without anything being provided in the agenda packet as to what was the trigger to put this back on. So I would like to see it removed and could be continued to the next meeting, but I doubt we would have gotten to it, but I wanted to get my concern out.
All right, so we have amendment to the motion to remove item 13 as well. Do I have a second on the amendment to the motion?
That's good. A comment or question?
Well, let's get the second and then we'll take the discussion. All right, Mr. Thompson.
And so, Paige, do we need more information in association with item 13 to have that conversation as a basically in the packet itself?
Yes, in my opinion.
Okay, any further discussion on that? All right, can we have a all in favor of removing item number 13?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion carries. Now back to the approval of the modified agenda. We're number 3, 6, 7, and 8 will go first, and then number 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, 11, and 12. Yeah, 9 goes in front too. Okay.
And disbursements.
And disbursements, I'm sorry. Okay, all in favor?
I have an audience question.
Yes, Ms. Watson.
Suzanne Watson. So I'm wondering, what was number 10, board consideration of possible action on criteria for setting water priorities? The only reason I'm asking is because I know that you were privy to some important information today. And when is that going to come up? And could there be possible action taken during this setting water priorities as to maybe giving input? So 10, I think, is something that I almost believe it's more important than number 7. With all due respect, you guys are not going to be here very long as a board, and to set trustee meeting policy and procedure when you're actually going to be off the board very soon. And this is something the new board might want to delve into a little bit deeper. You know, I hate to see a lot of time spent on item number 7 just because there's a new board coming on and they might do things a lot different. I think what you have to say is valuable, but I think number 10, the water, very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All in favor of changing the agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Thompson, are you voting? Aye or nay? We're just on the approval of the modified agenda.
Nay.
Okay, well, the ayes have it. So we have a modified agenda. All right, moving on then, we are going to go to the mayor's report. At the last meeting, well, no, I'm going to do my little welcome thing. All right. Welcome. We are pleased to have you in attendance this evening. We do welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. To address the board, please raise your hand and wait to be called on by the mayor. Then come to the podium and state your name and the street on which you live. If you are on Zoom and on a phone, press *9 to raise your hand to be recognized and *6 to mute and unmute. It will help the board to hear and understand your comments if they are clear, concise, and respectful. Please present factual information. Personal attacks of any kind are not in order. During the public comment period, you may address the board on any subject. When speaking on agenda items, please keep your statements directly about the agenda item to discuss. Until you are called on by the mayor, please be respectful of those around you and those who have the floor by remaining silent. Please take side conversations outside the room. And I would like to enforce that comments made in the public outside of the meeting can be heard and will disturb people who are listening on YouTube and on Zoom. So if you're going to make comments while you're sitting, please take it outside. All right, thank you very much. Now let's move on to the mayor's report. Last time we discussed the possible grant from AARP, and that was, and I was bringing back the specifics for that grant. I don't know if you guys got that. I know I was gonna, it's in the packet that I would provide it tonight. So at this point in time, what was in the packet has changed slightly. Oh, I did take it out. So we're rehabbing the walking paths in Apple Valley Park, making passable year round and handicap accessible, and then filling in the divots in the exercise station. There are no matching funds needed for this grant. Our in-kind will be staff and public works time. The grant amount is $19,000. Staff time is 40 hours of public works time at $4,000, 5 hours of staff time at $250. So the total for that would be 45 hours or $4,250 in kind. The application deadline is for March 22nd. So I would ask for a motion to approve the writing of this grant, writing and submission of this grant.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the writing of this grant for Apple Valley Park and for the ADA components.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes. All right, the second thing is I'd like to bring up shortly is just this showed up in the email yesterday. And it's the CDT is putting forth what they call a quick win grant. These are from $500 to $5,000, and it's basically to buy supplies. And so what we were thinking of, because they approve of it, it's supposed to support healthy activities in the community and to get people out, but they will buy shade. And so we can get between $500 and $5,000 worth of shade trees. There is no match whatsoever on this grant. It will be, the submission date is April 1st. It will be approved by April 24th. It is a reimbursement grant, which means we spend the money, send it into CDPHE, and then they reimburse us back. Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
What I would just add is that they actually direct solicited and forwarded this email to us as well. And the reason for that is that when we did the Revitalize Main Streets project and we had the questionnaires, largely supported through those surveys were parklets and shade trees on, especially in our commercial core area where we have no shade outside of building shade. And so part of the thought process behind that was that this supports that community effort and that community feedback. And when Mary and I discussed it briefly, our thought was that this may be something that the tree board or Jeff as the tree board advisor would want to participate in with the town staff.
And again, you know, this doesn't cover any staff time, so that it will buy the trees, town staff will have to plant them on their own dime, but it will buy trees. So can I get a motion to further explore this and or submit it?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we further explore, submit the CDPHE quick win grant for shade trees in town.
All right, do we have a second? Discussion from the board?
If the tree board wants to weigh in on this.
The tree board was made aware of the grant opportunity and has expressed support of exploring the grant further.
All right, yes,
I just had a question as to whether, can the town choose the trees to be provided?
yes.
And we don't know how many yet because it depends on how big the trees are.
Well, it's going to depend on, what the tree board, I'm going to give this back to the tree board to say how many trees they would like, where they want to plant them, what kind of trees they would like. Then we'll go price them and then we know how much for the grant.
Thank you.
Okay,
If we're,
yeah,
Madam Mayor, if we're trying to plant more trees on Grand Avenue, I'm trying to think where we could actually plant them because there's going to be some concrete cutting and some pretty serious work in order to provide spaces for trees.
yes, Ms. Ferguson.
So when we were investigating this and looking into this as part of that project, one of the things that was noted a lot was that the width of our sidewalks on Grand Avenue are a lot wider than they're required to be for accessibility and other function. And so in an effort to also not reduce the parking, the thought process was that we would need to lay out exactly where those trees would go. And based on canopy, which is where the tree board would be very useful. And then plan to do cutouts in almost into the sidewalk. We would cut out not just in the curb and into the sidewalk where the trees would be planted with the barrier system so that it forces roots down away from infrastructure. And so that's how we would address that. So we don't lose parking spots either.
So Madam Mayor, the other question is, does the grant cover the concrete work? And the
No.
cutting of the concrete?
No, it does not. The only thing it covers will be the buying of the trees.
Then we really need to look at what those costs would be
Right.
before we could approve of the grant. So.
And
Sure.
Another question is, we would focus on Grand Avenue, but we can plant anywhere in town.
You can plant anywhere in town. We could buy, if we could get 50 trees and plant 50 trees where we took them out, we could do a lot with this grant. And it doesn't have to be on Grand Avenue. We do have some holes that are in the concrete already that we could go ahead and use if we wanted just to use those existing holes, but yeah. Okay, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, did you have your hand up, Mr. Johnson?
I did, but I'm just wondering, does the staff have to do the work in planting these trees?
Yes,
Okay,
the grant does not cover staff time at all.
well, I'm just wondering if you can have volunteers to help
Oh,
plant.
that's sure, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
That was my
Yeah,
thought too, Nick.
yeah,
right. Oh, exactly.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's just that the grant won't pay for people to do it.
Right,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so all in favor of approving, investigating this grant for trees for the town?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, let's move on to, where's my modified agenda? God. You are so helpful. Oh my God. All right, so next up on the is board consideration of possible action regarding vacated trustee seat. So we have approximately a month and a half before the new board is seated. And there will still be one empty space when the new board is seated. So the question is, we can defer it and not do anything right now and run with the board that we have until the new board is seated and then let them make the decision on filling that seat. We can go ahead and appoint somebody tonight. Then we can do a special election if we wanted to, but probably not. What would be the board's desire? Yes, Ms. Smith?
I was wondering if we need to create some kind of not a resolution, because this is a board decision, but we have not, since my time being associated with the town, there's not been a formal resolution associated with a vacancy. And it is something that's in our SRSA handbook. They recommend that towns adopt a resolution declaring the vacancy, and therefore you have a start date for that 60-day time clock.
Okay.
So I have a motion to that effect, if you would like to hear it or have more discussion.
Let's have more discussion and then you can go ahead and make your motion. Anything else from the board on this? Oh, yes, Dave.
I was deeply disappointed that Tammy had left the board. I felt like she brought a huge perspective and really good judgment to the board, and I miss her deeply. So the thing I'd like to delay is I would really like to see her reconsider and come back to the board, because I think she has, given her background and her journalism and how much she knows about the town. It was very emotional the night she left, and I'm hoping that she would reconsider that decision. So the longer we can delay it, where she might have second thoughts, the happier I'd be.
So it sounds like you want to just go ahead and wait.
And I think it's the right thing to let the new board decide who their colleague would be. Because typically we take letters of interest. And I think for us as a board to appoint someone to a seat for like 5 or 6 weeks, they'd hardly get. They'd be here 2 or 3 meetings, that'd be it. And you just can't get your head around it in that amount of time.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
If Tammy's seat is filled in a similar fashion to what brought me here, would that person serve the remaining term that Tammy was set to
It
serve?
would be until the next election. It would be
2 more years.
It would be 2 years.
And if the position were a part of the election,
It can't be.
if it were,
Okay,
how many years would that seat?
It would still be
It would
2
still be 2 years.
Yeah.
So is there an opportunity to allow the citizens to participate in the choosing of that person, or does that have to be a board decision?
and ultimately it is board decision. We can take citizen input, of course, but it is a board decision.
So there wouldn't be, there's not an opportunity to have a special election to fill the individual.
We could. Ms. Ferguson is over there shaking her head yes. So yeah, we could, but it would cost the town. Yeah.
I would just, my comment, I'm outgoing soon, but my comment would be, it would be ideal for citizens of the town to make that decision over the board.
Okay, all right. Anything else? All right. Yes, Mr.
Madam Mayor, one thing I was wondering about is write-in candidacy. I mean, can't a citizen like, just
She's shaking
No.
her head.
Unfortunately, you have to declare that you want to be a write-in when you participate in the coordinated election with the county. And so if you don't declare yourself as a write-in prior to the ballot, when they count the ballots, those names, anyone who wrote in on the ballot, a different name isn't counted.
So the deadline to do that is gone.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. How about your resolution then, Ms. Smith?
All right, let me put this out for thought. I move to require a signed resignation letter from a trustee. The acceptance of the resignation must be voted upon by the remaining trustees, and the date of that vote sets forth the vacancy effective date, period. Trustees shall by resolution adopt the resignation, which begins the 60-day clock for filling the seat, and the resolution shall indicate how the seat will be filled.
Okay.
What happens if someone resigns and the board refuses the resignation?
Right.
I don't know.
You got any thoughts on that, Mr. Conklin?
So my few comments on this discussion are that there are a number of different ways to handle the resignation and an appointment or a replacement, either through appointment or that election. I think the use of the word accept generally in the law is not intended to imply that a board has the power to refuse that would then compel someone to serve, which they, if they are choosing not to and have resigned. I think it's more of kind of an informal act or implied act of the town that upon handing over the resignation or declaring the resignation, it's accepted. But to your suggestion about maybe adopting a resolution to say, trustee resigned effective as of, the submitting of the resignation to trigger that 60-day time period, and board intends to fill that seat by appointment, and then there's an opportunity to find somebody to appoint. Or if there's a decision to put it out to a special election, that just has to, one of those two things has to happen in that 60-day window.
So what about changing your motion to take out the acceptance by the board of a resignation letter and just doing the resolution to state when the resignation was effective and then setting the 60-day time period?
And one of the pieces I had in here was that, and Robert's rules seems to require this, is that there be a formal resignation letter submitted by the trustee and not an email. Is why I said resignation letter, because it says signed in Robert's rules.
Right.
And the sad thing is the way that the statute is worded, it only says when a vacancy occurs. There's no statutory direction on that, but it just seems that, a formal vote by trustees at the time is important. So, well, maybe it could simply be, I move to require a sign, and I'm just going to say this out loud. Move to require a sign. Do we want to require that when someone resigns, they must submit a letter to give them some time to think about it? Because I think if Tammy had time that night to go home and think about it and have to write a resignation letter, it might have turned out differently. So it seems like that might be something good to ask of someone who is resigning. For that reason, as well as I would really like to know more about why she resigned. And that could be in a letter, which would be instructive to all of us. So I'm just going to say, move to require a signed resignation letter from a trustee. Trustee shall by resolution adopt the resignation, which begins the 60-day clock for filling the seat, and the resolution shall indicate how the seat will be filled. I'm making it up.
Sounds pretty good.
But I don't know if I can recreate it because.
You want to cross out?
But I think Mr. Conklin had a.
Yes.
Just one other comment that Corinne also mentioned was the timing to submit. If a trustee declares that they've resigned and then confirms that by an email, and then we have a policy that says, well, it's not effective until you submit us a letter. And if we need some time requirement for which that letter to be submitted. The last thing I would say is, in my experience, I think I've seen people, trustees or town councilors, resign in a number of different ways. I don't think there's like one magic thing, but to your point, if you're wanting some clear finality on it, asking for something in writing, whether it be a letter or an email, sound reasonable.
Move to require a formal declaration of resignation from a trustee. Is a formal declaration an email or a letter? Is that, am I making?
I would just say in writing.
Okay.
Okay, move to require in writing. I'm gonna have to redo this. Okay. I move to require a trustee, move to require a resigning trustee to submit a written notice of resignation. The trustees, period. Trustees shall by resolution adopt the resignation, which begins the 60-day clock for filling the seat, and the resolution shall indicate how the seat will be filled. Does that get at it? Was that too choppy?
I think that gets it. I think the one potential question was, I think that would work in almost all cases. Hopefully this won't happen very often, but if someone declares in a meeting, I resign, and then refuses to send an email, that's kind of the only thing. Oh gosh, trying to think of every scenario, one of these, it's sometimes hard. Or so maybe I'll just throw this out there and see if this works, is that resignation needs to be submitted in writing. If a verbal resignation is given, there a request to confirm such resignation in writing. However, if no response is received within 7 days, the resignation will be considered effective. The oral resignation will be considered effective.
I didn't catch all that.
Sorry, trying to legislate on the fly sometimes.
Yes.
Is difficult, because then you start thinking, well, what if they say, well, I didn't mean it, but I guess that's kind of your point.
Well, and my point is that in the heat of the moment, someone should have an opportunity to go home and sleep on it. I feel like, and not just, under those circumstances that night, it was seriously terrible.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe that works then, because that 7-day cooling off period gives somebody the opportunity to say, I meant it or I didn't.
Right.
So say it again.
Yeah.
So can
All right, let me try this.
I'm gonna just listen to it.
Well, I only have part of this in writing, and I'm having trouble capturing the beginning. I think we could go with, hang on, the last half of the motion. Does this sound like it can stand? Trustees shall by resolution adopt the resignation, which begins the 60-day clock for filling the seat, and the resolution shall indicate how the seat will be filled. Therefore, there is a resolution. This is not the motion.
Right.
There's a resolution for every trustee that resigns or mayor that resigns.
Right.
Okay, so that last half works?
Yep.
Okay,
So keep that.
so.
Resignations shall be submitted in writing or may be made verbally. However, any verbal resignation must be either confirmed or withdrawn in writing within 7 days of such oral resignation. In the event no.
Wait.
Oh, dear.
In the
Verbal resignation. Verbally,
we can.
any verbal resignation must
Just
be.
getting it into the minutes.
I think, yeah. And,
Oh, it's
we can-
recorded.
right. And then if no such response is received within 7 days, the verbal resignation shall be deemed effective.
Okay. We have a motion on the table then?
Yes.
Okay.
That's 7 days, it gives, if they
Right.
confirm it, then it gives me a chance to put together a resolution for your next packet.
Okay, all right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion from the board? All right, hearing none. Anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
Suzanne Watson. So just for some clarity, are we going to have an ordinance? Okay, so we're just making this motion for tonight, but
A resolution.
so it's a permanent resolution that will, okay, so we have a resolution that you want to adopt the resignation of a trustee, but it would also be nice to have some formal process described somewhere in either our code or our resolutions as a separate resolution. So people, it's not just tonight and then we all forget next year that there is a process, but it would be nice for people to know what the process, if they want to resign, is to give that conclusion. And then ultimately, I mean, the irony of someone just saying I resign and not submitting something to the entire board. The irony was there was some admonition for a trustee going and acting out on their own. Well, the ultimate acting on your own is quitting without the board giving you permission. So, I mean, if we do follow Robert's rules as a law, that would be, I mean, this is an elected official to answer to the people. I voted for Tammy. She's also serving on another committee, an ad hoc committee with the mayor. And it would be nice to have that formal resignation for closure, where you were all representing us. So to answer to that and to accept the resignation that way would be, I think, beneficial. Thanks.
Yes, Mr. Conklin.
So maybe just to tack on to your motion, is that you direct the town attorney to prepare a resolution incorporating the motion as a policy of the town.
Okay,
And then bring it back at the next meeting. This will be your resolution policy. And then at the same time, we can just go ahead and nothing precludes you from adopting a second resolution to say resignation's effective such and such date. We're looking for appointees and so forth. So
okay. Do we all understand what we're
that's a
voting?
good point that we should have.
One last question. So at this point, there is no clock ticking for the vacant seat. Is there?
No,
I think the clock is ticking effective as of the last, whenever the verbal
Yeah.
resignation was
Which
made.
was the
Last meeting. Yeah.
which was the
24th, 22nd.
22nd. So 60 days is April 20 something second.
No, it's like.
Was it the February? Oh, no, April.
May, yeah, so it's only 30
February.
days till May to April from February to March, yeah.
April 22nd, and the new board will be seated the day after that 60th
24th,
day.
yeah.
Is it time change?
It's April
So-
22nd is 60 days.
And isn't that the next board that?
No, it's the
Is that-
24th or 28th. something like
Okay,
that.
so this will be the sitting set of trustees to, so we do need to continue to talk because the time needs to be provided to ask for letters of interest for people who want to fill the seat. You want to, and that's the discussion. Do we want to do that?
You know, we can do that. We can ask for letters right now. They can be presented to the new board and the new board can make the decision on who they want to choose from those letters.
Can they, the new board,
Certainly.
Yeah,
in whenever that is?
Yeah, so the decision to appoint, I think, needs to occur within 60 days after the date of resignation.
So if we-
So not later than whatever, April 22nd.
But the new
So
board
can-
doesn't take seat.
can we decide to,
When does the new board? Which meeting?
April 28th.
28?
Oh, okay.
So,
Yes.
Madam Mayor, can we continue? In other words, when that deadline comes up, can we vote to continue it and extend it?
That was one of my questions.
Or can we ask our attorney to come up with solutions for this dilemma? Because we as a board don't want to appoint, we'd like the new
Right.
board to appoint.
Right.
Well, let me think about that. I don't think we need to make that
No,
determination.
we don't need to
tonight,
make that
but-
decision
So
tonight.
for the next meeting, I think opinion on the resignation is that it was effective from the last meeting. You have 60 days to make an appointment or order a special election. There's a motion, I think, with a addition to make that a kind of create a resignation policy at the town. And then at the same time, there's certainly letters of interest can come in for trustees positions, and we'll be prepared. There's a couple meetings, I guess, between we got the 24th and then the first meeting in April prior to that deadline. So I'll look at whether there's any other options for the town, but otherwise get those answers to you sooner than later, so then be prepared to make a decision on an appointment if there's some nominees either at the next meeting or the meeting after that.
Okay, yes.
Another option might be a citizen willing to serve for 2 meetings and then resign.
All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Anything else from the board before we go to the public? All right,
I was just,
yes, Mr. Thompson.
the 60-day timing period, like, it just seems critical that the new board identify the new person. And if there's a way for us to push that 60-day window back, that would be ideal.
Hopefully our attorney will come up with sly means of doing that. All right, Ms. Patterson, you had your hand up.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. It's a wonder that I am so in line with what you are saying about Tammy Mack. That was just it was a horrifying meeting. I'm so sorry it got to that place because Tammy is a treasure. I can't say enough about her and how she has served and how much work she has done on this board and for this town. So am I hearing then that this motion will preclude her from, by the slightest miracle, to maybe make a different choice and get back on the board, or that's not that option?
I think she could send a letter of interest in and be reappointed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Berger.
So I thought this would be a curveball, but I don't think it is. It's a direct pitch. One thing you can do is appoint someone who is going to be on that next board. For example, Thomas Markle, someone who has been at almost every meeting. He knows what's going on. He could be in the saddle from moment one. And then it would be just like if a trustee bumped up to mayor when they take that position and there's an opening, and then that board would have 60 days to appoint. And coincidentally, I have discussed this with Mr. Merkel, and I believe he would be involved. You've also got three other people to choose from.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Berger. That really is quite a good suggestion. Okay. Anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Merkel.
Just to respond to that.
Again.
Yes, I agree.
state your name, state
Yeah,
your
Thomas
name.
Markle, 302 Second Street. Thanks, Bill. Since I've spoken with you, I thought about it, and I think it might be, if you guys are going to do that, a good choice to bring somebody in who doesn't come to meetings, so that they have a chance to participate, moving forward. Because I'm already here, as you know, so to bring somebody else who isn't here in might be appropriate.
That's also a good suggestion. Thank you. All right.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, anything else? All right, we have a very long and complicated motion on the table, which has many parts, some of which have been crafted over here, some of which have been crafted over there. Do we generally have a good idea of what we're voting on? Yes? Are we
Yes.
ready to vote? All right, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that motion passes. Do we want to, at the next meeting, shall we consider appointment? So we'll just put it on the agenda for the next minute to consider. We'll ask for letters and then maybe appoint somebody. Okay. All right, moving on to board consideration and possible action on the ad hoc committee recommendation for trustee meeting policies and procedure modification. Mr. Thompson and Mr. Knudsen, you worked very hard.
Did we vote to move this on the agenda?
Yes, we did
Yes.
at the very beginning. So
Yeah, so
Okay, so
it came up, it was,
okay,
yeah.
I thought- Well, the impetus for my interest in the topic is, as a father and a working person, the the investment in our town is great. And the meetings can be very challenging, and just trying to find a way to streamline the way we do business so that we feel like our time is well spent. It's kind of what made me interested in proposing some possible changes. And seeing folks in the crowd who wait until 10 o'clock at night to come to the podium to speak, things of that nature, frustrating. And I think we can do a little better. So.
Anything to add, Mr. Vincent?
I think the main thing I'd add is Bill has asked that we be very clear that he was only at our first meeting and didn't adopt the entire group of what we had done, because he was only with us the very first time we met. And so Jeff and I kind of rolled along with it. So he asked that the public's clear about that he was just in the initial meeting. I really appreciated the comments that this Jeff made, Jeff Conklin, as far as modifying some of the things. I like the idea of the 3 minutes for the public rather than just 2 minutes. Sometimes it's hard to get your thoughts across in that amount of time. I like the 3-minute thing. The idea of having a hard stop to the meeting, it's just my personal observation that we all get tired by 9:30 or 10. And it's really good to do, and this is from my experience as a meeting facilitator, that you focus on the most important things first and try to get those done while you're fresh, and then let the other things go. Now, part of the things, and I think Roger Barrell is a good example of that. He came to a meeting and had to wait till after 9:30 for his agenda item to come up. I think I'm accurate on that. It was really late. And to me, that's disrespectful of the individual person from the public who comes in, asks for agenda item, gets put on the agenda, and then has to sit through 3 or 4 hours of a meeting before we finally get to it. So tonight was an example of what we're trying to do with our meeting, saying what's really important. We're trying to be considerate to staff, asking staff, what do they need to have decisions made on? And then we honor that. What citizens are here that have an agenda item that they're waiting for? And also, what guests do we have? Like Brandon's here tonight. You know, we want to get to his item. We don't want him waiting through a number of administrative reports and things like that. And, you know, Jeff has a drive, Jeff has a drive back tonight. So, we wanted to have a little experiment tonight and say, we're going to have a hard stop at 9:30. We also suggested a break partway through the meeting. We did that last time. And I think that's a good thing. So we're not asking you to adopt this all right now. I think what Jeff and I could do, if he's agreeable, is go back and redline what we have right now with our attorney's comments and bring a red line document about how we will conduct meetings back. Because I think if we tried to make the decision tonight, we would have this big back and forth, kind of like we did with Page's motion. It would be very difficult. Right? So in the packet is our committee suggestions. In the packet are also the legal advice and comments from our lawyer. And so we'd like the public to look at that and be prepared to have a more thoughtful discussion next time. And Jeff and I think, can bring in a red line by then.
Well, shall we get suggestions from the board on the document that we have in front of us so that we can make, you guys can make other changes? So discussions, yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm always first. So please, somebody else go first. Good. Okay, I will. So one of the things I wanted to bring up as a public person who came to every meeting, I just have to disclose the reason I came to those meetings is because I read the packet thoroughly. I did research on the packet. And one of the reasons there's so much public comment is the information you were given in the packet was incorrect. And 2 things happened. One was there was not a red line of what you were being asked to vote on in a changed document, which is, I don't know how you vote if you don't know what you're voting on. So I would add to this some of just things that should be considered when the packet's put together. A red line, a strikeout, underline, red line, whatever you call it, like we did for the water ordinance, must always be provided in any document that's a draft or it's a change to an existing document. And my second thing is, oftentimes when I spoke up, it was because something was being proposed to be changed, but the existing ordinance had not been reviewed and considered in the change being proposed. So again, the content of the packet needs to be accurate. And the requisite homework by staff and attorney must be done so that you know you are reviewing something that you can adopt without repercussions. So those are my two big things. And I wouldn't have come to meetings other than there were things that weren't correct. And I couldn't stand it. So I had to speak up.
Okay.
And I don't want to come, I mean, I didn't want to come to every meeting. So if we could get better packets, and my example of 13, that was so open-ended, I had no idea what we would be talking about. And I don't think you should, I think everyone should get the same piece of information in the packet, whether it's you already know the information, I don't know the information. Every agenda item should be thoroughly explained. Why is it in front of us? What's the point of the decision? Where's the decision? Question that needs to be considered. And my last thing is, and this is my pet peeve when we have our public hearings, where we are a quasi judicial body, please incorporate the public notice, a copy of the public notice that was published, which includes the date, any letters, a copy of the letters that went out to the folks that have to be written to within 300 feet, depending on the situation, a copy of that letter, and clearly say if there were any objections, because I've had to ask for that clarification, and I don't feel comfortable voting unless I have it all in front of me and the public can see the same thoroughly presented packet and the statute or the ordinance being used to make the decision. And the planning commission's recommendation, that was not in the last one that had to be postponed. It's very important that we get their recommendation as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else from the board? No? No. Okay. So I'm gonna give the public an opportunity to give us some input. Because we're trying to get through a lot tonight in a very short period of time, I'm gonna ask everyone just 3 minutes and only speak once per discussion item. So would anybody from the public like to make comment on the rules of procedure? Yes, Mr. Mark.
Thank you, Dave, especially for considering changes to meeting structure. Did anybody watch the video that I sent out? Okay, cool. I thought that was very helpful. It was a video by Ann McFarland of Jurassic Department that was forwarded to me by Ms. Watson. And I also had an email exchange with Dave a little bit about this. Did you guys look at past meetings to do times to figure out where time is actually spent?
It's a good suggestion, but
yeah, I did review a few meetings. I didn't like write down times or anything, but I think a lot of what I see is discussion. It's happening right now, actually, around things that don't have a motion already in place. And it's something I brought up in my spiel, whatever, the last month. But you're here to make a decision, right? If there's no decision up for debate, why are we here, right? And you should have all the information you need from the packet, as Paige said, to make that decision, right? Mary should guide the decision, but not participate in this decision, except in very certain circumstances, right? So I think if those rules, those very basic rules are stuck to, I think you can save a lot of time.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Yes, Mr. Burke.
Pass this down. So this is a copy of the Census Initiative that I drafted in response to the last time public comment was curtailed to a significant degree. It's just a reminder. So if you don't forget that, I think the reason I wanted my name not associated with your suggestions is that I see it basically as shooting the messenger. In my view, most of the comments from the public deal with shortcomings and the things that are presented to you, that you need to get staff doing it right. They're not getting it done. And so rather than shooting or wounding the messenger, I think you should, and I don't see any reference to this and the thing that was presented. And I know it's hard to do it all. But there was no actual analysis of where time goes and what are the reasons that this takes so long. And so when you're just throwing out things, we're going to limit people to 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever, without first actually going, I mean, there's videos of this. You can go through and you can see where did the time go. And what did that time being spent and all this input from the public, did that result in a change in the decision of the board? Well, it's my memory, it's probably at least half the time, probably more than that. And so rather than trying to eliminate or curtail public comment, there's got to be something else that presents the information where it should come from, your staff, instead of having the public come in and say, wait a minute, this isn't right. Don't you know about this and that? So.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. White.
Suzanne Watson. So I want to say that I think Mr. Conklin has said something about maybe not allowing the public comment during discussion items, making differentiation between discussion and action items. But I want to remind you, in the past, we used to have just discussion items and they were marked with a little d. And you knew that maybe even as a board, you didn't have to like totally study on that one because you had this action item that would be more important. But when I was on the board, it became every item on the agenda could be action. And so you never knew, can we just, and so it would be nice if you do differentiate between discussion and action so people know what's expected of them and board members know what to prepare for. Preparation before you come to the meetings. Think about the time that you have to spend preparing going through the information in the packet. And that, again, I think it speaks to what Ms. Smith said about having good information in there so each board member doesn't have to do their own research. I want to say, if you remember last year, we had this dark skies ordinance that kept coming forward. And I think it was very, very poorly prepared. Hopefully, Mr. Conklin can be looking at that. Because, I mean, it's a fine line between like, all of a sudden you're burdened with too much. Another thing is I want to remind you of the marijuana store hearings that you had, and there's nothing in our code that requires a hearing for a marijuana store. And the only requirement by state statute is for the medical stores. And if we say, oh, well, we just decided to have a hearing, that's not fair. If it's not part of your law, you shouldn't be requiring stores to have hearings. Because next year, what if another store wants to come in and you decide, well, it's not in our law, so we won't make them have a hearing. So it's not fair. If it's not in the law, don't require it. Don't take up your time. And that took a lot of time and it was expensive too because they have to be advertised. So again, what gets into the packet is very important to how long your meetings run. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anything else from the public? All right. Seeing none, we will visit this item again. All right. Next item is the presentation of JDS Hydro Progress Report. All right. Hopefully we will get our presenter on screen. Okay, anywhere? Oh,
I haven't seen.
uh-oh.
Something must have come up because I spoke to him earlier this afternoon and he was going to be in attendance.
From,
James from Starnes.
right, I mean, from 6:30.
He knew the meeting was at 6:30, yes.
I can probably talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. At least we'll get something.
So I'll do my best. Brandon Bear, if you guys don't know, I'm with SGM. So JDS and SGM have been collaborating together in a sense, so I'm gonna I'll go through his as much as I can. It's in your packet, it's in the packet for the public. James put together a progress report to kind of go over just where they were at in their projects, and it mostly had to do with data collection and the water model and the information that was put in that. And then also to address some of the stuff that has gone on here the last couple of months about the water system and staffing levels with the water system. And I'm paraphrasing all of this because James isn't here, but I'm going to jump to page 2 where it starts talking about the 5 or 6 different items in this progress report. And this will kind of lead into where I'll talk a little bit about the engineering task list stuff that we've, again, collaborated with. So, the water conservation, until the 1 million plant is brought back online, it's kind of hard to conserve a bunch of water with those storage facilities. But yes, the community needs to be, thinking that way. That conservation goes into water breaks, all that stuff, as we talked previously about the CIP plan, and going through that. The PRV valve maintenance, we've talked about that. It kind of ad nauseum. I have not seen a follow-up report from JDS, not JDS, but John Tedder about the valves.
Not yet.
Okay, so that should be coming about, which one, approximate costs for each valve, PRV vault. Let's see, number 3, ensure reliable operation of the upper treatment facility. So this kind of comes out of what's SSG and their, with the skid and the piping and, anchoring the, those extra tanks, the CIP tanks. So that's kind of the discussion item there. Bringing the lower plant back online, because as we've talked, and we all thought that plant was online. Both engineering firms were led to believe that. There's steps with CDPHE that we talked about before that we have, we have to go through to get that back online. As we talked as well, and the add something here is that, as discussed, my opinion is that you don't need to operate that lower plant as long as we can get that valve installed that would allow water to be, just treated at the upper plant and then just fed into your storage tank so that to reduce your electrical costs and maintenance. You don't have to do as much maintenance and it doesn't take as much staff time when we're looking for additional folks. Number 5, develop construction standards and O&M, procedures. Speaking a little bit for JDS, we've talked about this one together. This is something the town should develop. I've sent Corinne an example that, of another client that I've helped develop these for as well. So whether JDS does this or SGM, maybe a collaboration, we can get it done. But that is critical to, if we're going to start replacing a bunch of infrastructure, there isn't currently a good set of documents for the town as to what the standards are. As to, so those need to be developed as we start doing these construction projects. I was just talking to the contractor, Jeff Farouk, out here with this, emergency sewer line repair about what needs to be done in order to kind of have a baseline set of standards of how to install that as they put it back in. So it's being done. And the last one that that James had in his list here was the leak detection. We talked about that a little bit last time meeting. That could be a priority. It will help. It's very hard to pinpoint exactly where all the stuff is. And so it might fall further down the priority list. But again, this letter was from earlier in February is when it was dated, February 4th. So we're, 6 weeks after that at this point, but that was the progress that was kind of a result of some of the information that was coming from SSG and their big spread, spreadsheet of items. So that's how this would generate.
Okay, well, I don't know if you can answer questions, but
I'll try.
all right, questions from the board for Brandon in place of
James.
James. Yeah.
Brandon, I'm hearing different things, and
Okay.
the main thing that I'm a little confused on is about the lower plant.
Okay.
And the recommendation of whether to have it online or not. And I guess part of my confusion or misunderstanding is that we have water rights specific to each plant, and I'm very concerned about our lack of use of the water rights for the lower plant. So how does those things jive?
So yes, and we kind of talked about this a little bit last meeting, but just so it's in there again, you would want to get the plant, it's operable, it can be operable. There's steps that have to be done to run some CIPs to get those membranes, activated. I would, once a year, whatever, because that shows water rights due diligence. Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong. But if you ran it once, say a month out of the year, and maybe you want to run it more during the summer season, during more peak demand. It also depends on what the spring production is, as well as they should be fine. In the past, the plant has been had it ran, through the year. So that's that would be my recommendation. Do you need to run it 24/7, 365? No. But in order to satisfy water rights, yes, you want to run it periodically.
So when we have a recommendation to bring it online, we're not talking, it doesn't need to be a permanent online. It just needs to be an operational online.
Correct. The only thing that you'd want permanently online, at least is the tank. It will help with the demand because the lower clock tank primarily, serves the town. I'll say below the mesa, and it would take the burden off of storing all the water up at the 2 million gallon tank.
Will you remind me, are we storing water in the 1 million gallon tank right now?
Correct. Currently, there's water in that tank. It is not suitable for consumption right at the moment.
And do we have the facilities to bring that water to consumable?
So my direct answer to you is CDPHE will tell you no, but there's ways to work with CDPHE and get that water chlorinated and tested so that you wouldn't have to dump 1 million gallons.
Yes, Mr.
I
Combs.
was just gonna follow up on that question about abandonment of water rights. So I'm not familiar with the town's water rights portfolio, but just kind of general principles within water law are that non-use of a water right for 10 straight years is kind of a presumption of abandonment. However, there has to be an intent to abandon accompanying that. So following that period of time, and I'm starting off just talking generally any water right, it'd be placed on an abandonment list. And at that time and that happens every 10 years, there's an abandonment list, and then there's an opportunity to protest that. And it's kind of like by the time they do a preliminary abandonment list to then a final, to then from that point, you have another 6 months to protest it. It's like a 2-year process for that abandonment issue. Municipalities are given more flexibility because there's an understanding that you generally have to, at least with conditional water rights, the opportunity to grow into them. And just as a general matter, there's more flexibility. So I'd say that not knowing what the water rights portfolio of the town is, what's being used, where there's been non-use, what your augmentation plan looks like and how that's being reported. So there's a long way to go before you lose a water right. Having said that, the fundamental principle of a water right is placing water to beneficial use. And so you want to make sure that, as Brandon said, that you're utilizing that water to the extent well, you're making use of the water rights that you have. And then lastly, having the plant down, I don't know that would create a presumption of, or add to the presumption of an abandonment of a water right, but it might diminish your ability to then, wherever your supply is being diverted from, your diversions might be reduced if there's not a place to put it. So I can see why that would be prudent to bring online.
Thank you. Yes,
Don't we have to run the clock plant to get the data to send to JDS Hydro for the water moratorium?
Yes, it would help to have, yes, that. Based on, because I've talked to James about this, yes, it would help understand the system a little bit better. Because, yeah, there was basically a data point that was given for, for the initial development. Yep.
Because they basically have no data for that.
Right, they've gotten data since, but originally it was more or less one data point.
Ms. Ferguson.
What I would add to that is that James and I had that conversation when we talked earlier as well. And I said, if the board chose not to have the plant online 24/7, how would they account for that? And he said, what the information they need is how much water the springs are feeding to that plant. And so you could get that through, there's 2 meters in there. And we need to have the meters online and collecting that information. Because again, what they stated, and you can confirm, is that usage is basically usage. And we know how much water the town of Paonia water users use. They're just using it all from one source right now.
Correct.
thank you. Yes, Ms.
I feel like at some point, is CDPHE, did they provide you a list, Corinne, of what needs to be done in the 1 million gallon plant to get it up and running?
No, so I spoke with Margaret some more about that, and I sent her just last week, they requested to have the video and information about the tank inspection that CW Divers did so that they could get a better idea of whether they had additional requirements outside of what they usually require, which is, like I said, it's a very dumbed down version to say the re-wetting of the membranes and things like that, but basically just getting everything oiled and ready to go and running some tests. And it has to be water tests and things done before you can release anything into the system. So she said that they have their own engineers that look at the information provided and then make a determination of whether or not they're going to supply additional requirements. And they have not yet.
Okay. So it's possible not that much really needs to be taken care of in there other than getting those meters up and running from the springs, and they're there. They just need to be electrified.
That was the information that I received, but SSG did not do anything thorough at the one. So I've requested that information from our staff today after I spoke with James.
Okay. And then I have a second question, and it is the JDS Hydro report on the very back page has the list of SOPs. And then the new construction standards one was added with this progress report. And
It's in there in structure analysis.
And I don't know, my question is, do we have any of those SOPs in existence now? And are there priorities with that list? It's about a dozen there, and I don't know what they all mean.
So I don't know if these exist.
Okay.
I don't know. I would have to say that some of them do, based on, previous conversations with staff. Some of it is like, I'll say, I'm just gonna pick one, like the backwashing, that's for the membranes. That one would more or less come from the manufacturer. It says, here is the process of how you backwash. So, and that would just be one that would be quote unquote shoved into the binder that says, as part of the SOP. There are some in here that would have to be generated by staff. For example, like the spring operation and data collection, that one would have to be here, here's the step, the 10 steps that you have to do to go, check the spring, clear out debris, whatever those steps are. But yeah, that would have to be developed.
And that would constitute the manual that needs to be in place so that.
It would be, yeah, it would be one step of a manual, yeah, part of a manual, yes.
Okay, because as I understand it, I don't know if Benny is working on it, so Benny Archuleta, who is now the ORC, I don't know if he's been tasked with creating any SOPs.
Yeah, no.
So do we need a separate effort to get all these SOPs written? Could that be done with the, ultimately the ORC hired through the
It's
9-month contract?
It's in the RFP.
Okay, so that's where we might be able to get all that done, which we're paying them anyway. So we would be paying them to do the SOPs, and then you have the manual that can be in place for another employee to be able to operate. That's not licensed, but working on licenses. Okay, thank you.
I would say, just to throw it out there, we can also help develop at least, some of these, so at least some guidelines and some, things that to consider in those, just with our, as I always tell people, I do have an operator's license, even though, and I've been doing engineering for 20 years. I can design it, I can troubleshoot it, I can tell you how to run it, but CDPHE won't let me run it physically. But we have the experience that can, help develop those.
And does every SOP, is it specific to that treatment plant? Or are there generic SOPs to go with some of these?
There will be some specific things, but a lot of it is, can be generic, that you need to do this, you need to do that. And then there would be a subsection, if you will, it says specific, or, this is, specific, you have to do this, this, and this for this valve or this, membrane. But a lot of it can be, generic, here's the daily procedures of what to check, what to look at, what to write down, and that goes in your daily logs.
Good, because we need to save money. So that's good if we could do that. So the other thing I just wanted to talk about was the construction standards, which was an add-on by JDS in this progress report because of all the breaks we're having, I'm assuming. So that seems like a really important SOP to have done as soon as possible. And I don't know how we can go about doing that. If we want to put out, get a contract or get it done. And so that's my first thing is I would like to make a move on that tonight. Personally,
Well, let me
if we can.
just add to that real quick.
Okay.
Is that, just to clarify, the construction standards, I would say that it wouldn't be referred to as a SOP.
Oh.
Because they're just, what they are is they are specific construction standards. I'll say standards and specs, specifications, so that, any contractor could say, well, what's your standard? Well, here's, and Jeff could probably speak to it too, because we work with a lot of clients. Every town has a different standard. Every town has a different manufacturer on what valves they want and everything else. So I just want to clarify, they're not standard operating procedures or standard construction specs. And just so you know.
Seems important for everything that we're doing right now to maybe move forward with that. And we know we can get other entities to write the other ones potentially. And that's just a thought. And the one other thing I wanted to bring up is that there's that appendix in our ordinance, which is a lot of construction information. And if we don't want people using that, I think we should say so in this construction specs or not.
Yeah, so my quick answer to that, or quick comment, it would be that if you guys want SGM to do that, we can. We would look at that information and see, because we just went through the effort with the city of Glenwood Springs, where some of that stuff was in their municipal code and they pulled it. And so now there's some references, but they pulled it all out and made a separate engineering construction standards document. And they pulled all that stuff out, so it's no longer in the municipal code. So it can be done, it can be either way. It can be referenced, or it can be, taken out and have a standalone document.
Or not use it. That's what I was
Correct.
thinking.
Do
not go look here and use this.
Or not use it if it doesn't make sense, and then you guys would have to, have a resolution to take it out.
Just don't want competing
Correct.
information to be out there.
Correct.
Any other questions from the board?
Can I make a couple comments?
Sure.
Some things have come out of this conversation. One is there was a lack of information coming from the town to our consultants. That was basically, this plan is running, but it wasn't. And so there's a period of time that we should try to identify that the lower plant has been fully non-operational. And I would like to know, how much of this 10-year non-use have we gotten into through this lack of operations, and with the reporting that, oh yeah, it is online, but it's not. So we don't really know where we are in this time frame. And the other thing that came up is the question of a water rights portfolio. And I have serious concerns about the extent of the town's portfolio and how much we haven't really identified what our water rights really are. And in a small growing town that has water issues, I'm seriously concerned with the source of our water and really like what we're legally allowed to take. And I don't, without that portfolio, I just don't know how far down the road we can get on some of this stuff. And so I just want to take the opportunity to inject that there's some information that we're in need of that we're operating without.
Yes, Ms. Ferguson.
I can tell you the last time that the plant was used was during our water situation in 2019. That was the last time that I know without a doubt that the plant was operational. We were using that plant to provide water. It was under a boil order, and that was because all of the steps needed to bring it fully back online had not been taken at that point. And so the only way that we were able to use that water was through a boil order. Prior to that, it was 2015 when it was taken offline for the lining. The initial lining, there was a failure of the initial lining, and then the town put it, we had to do a second lining.
That's helpful. Thanks.
And Jeff, SGM has water rights capabilities as well. So that's something that we could help the town with. It's not me, but there's a separate group in SGM that does water rights and water supply, water resources, all that.
And GDS Hydro did look at the water rights, and they have some questions about some of them. And I have a collection. I went out and started looking for all our water rights and getting documentation on all of that. And there are some that are missing that I haven't been able to find via the state or whatever. So yeah, we need some more investigation on that for sure. Yes, Mr.
Yeah, I was just going to add that what you're asking for, that type of report gets produced for municipalities from time to time, a review of what are your water rights, how are they being used, where are your, do you have sufficient water supply? What do you have the ability to grow into? I know SGM has a team that handles that. I was looking at one of these a week or two ago. The town of Ridgeway just had this done. And if you go look on their website, that's a good example of what one could look like. It's not necessarily a cheap thing to have commissioned, but that's something that could be produced.
So I do have one question about the springs that are going to the lower plant. The altitude valve.
Yep.
Can we capture that spring water and take it up to the 2 million to be? No.
You'd need a pump station.
Okay, so in order to actually use those springs and that water, then we need to run the 1 million.
Yes, you need to run the lower plant, yes.
Okay, so. All right, so that's.
There's separate springs just based on elevation that cannot get to the upper pump.
Okay. All right, so now, do you want to make any comments about the engineering task?
Yeah, but I don't know, do you need public comment on?
Well, let's I'm going to kind of push them both together and
That's
then
fine.
we'll.
That's fine. Okay, I'll just keep going. So then on the switching gears with the next one that's got SGM and JDS letterhead together. So part of our collaboration was trying to, put this, in a form to present to you guys of where, where SGM or JDS could work together and try to accomplish all this stuff. Now, granted, this list is not inclusive, but these are things that we've talked about, the last 6 weeks. I mean, I've been here this is the third time I've been here in, the last 6 weeks. So obviously the construction standards, we've already kind of touched on that. That could be SGM or JDS. I would, and that the reason we're saying SGM or JDS, what James and I've talked about is just purely from a workload standpoint. So depending on how much of this the board wants to tackle would be where James and I would try to work together. If we couldn't do it, we would get JDS to help out because they're super busy as well. But just given the knowledge base between the firms, that's what we've kind of agreed to. And so I'll go down through all of them. The water loss analysis support, that could be either firm. And all this is going to come from your priorities and what you guys decide. The rate study, that should be done, as we talked about, because it's going to help with these funding. That's kind of what we talked about, a week and a half ago, when I came over for the CIP. It's going to affect rates about how you guys want to move forward and prioritize projects and how you're going to fund those projects. So that's a big one. The altitude valve one, again, we could easily, this is the altitude valve at the 1 million tank. So SGM, that's already designed. Corinne and I are cleaning it up. We need one elevation shot for the overflow, just so we're going to get Randy Wilmore to shoot us an elevation just so that we can get that, so that we can put the valve in and at the right elevation, and that can be done. Water line improvements, yes, that would fall to us, just given that, our knowledge and CIP, reports and whichever priority list that you guys come up with of what blocks and where you guys want to go with that. The raw water spring surveying, it's complete as I showed you on the GIS mapping. There would be some additions depending on how you guys, want to use that information. So I would say that one's in our courts, but it could sit. That's not a high priority right now either. And the same with the spring repairs, depending on where the priorities lie. That one could push down the list, but SGM would do that work. The transient analysis, that would make sense to send back to JDS, just because they were the original, firm that set up the water model. I do have a copy of that. We could do that, but it just makes sense for them to do it with all the additional data that would be supplied. PRV vault design, that's already ongoing. We're just waiting on the final recommendations from Mr. Tedder about the costs. The CIP tank anchoring, we've talked about that as well. JDS could do that. It's just anchoring those tanks that were brought up in SSG's not letter, but Excel sheet. And then the two at the bottom, the master planning for the water and the wastewater, it kind of goes back to the CIP that we talked about last week and what the priority list is, depending on how much you guys want to, plan for. That's already we've already got it in the CIP plan. And then it would just be putting together construction projects, and then you'd update that like we talked last time about put a new year and kick out another number for you and tell you, what's running out of useful life. So that's the engineering task list between the two firms that we wanted to put in front of you guys. Some of it is based off the SSG, some of it is just based off of our historical knowledge and just the discussions with the board and the staff.
Well, I'd like to bring something up right now. When you mentioned rate study. So we met with Scott Thomas, and thank you, Thomas Markle, for getting him over here. Scott Thomas is the Colorado Rural Water Association. And they support water systems for towns under 10,000 in population. And they provide assistance with grant and loan applications, rate studies, asset management, resiliency plans, and capital improvement plans. And so they would be happy to do a rate study for us and an asset management plan for us, which would look at our water and wastewater systems. And they would start with the basis of the RCAC study, the SGM asset inventory, and the JDS hydro report. And they're going to look at operations, capital reserves, debt management, and create a comprehensive plan for us, looking at what what are our priorities, what we would need to save for those priorities, what we need for operations, what we need to run the things, how much capital we need, capital improvement, the whole thing. They would take all that and do this for us for free.
I approved that grant.
Yeah. And then it'll take them a couple of weeks. Corinne sent them all the information this afternoon, so they have it. It's going to be a couple of weeks before they can get back to us. And then they will come to a board meeting and present their findings for us. And then they also suggested that we look at the USDA-RA for funding for large infrastructure projects, because depending on the community and the financial situation of the community, that doesn't have to be 100% loan. It can actually be between 25 and 75% grant from the USDA. And they will help us write documents to apply for that. So I think the first thing is let's get them to do the rate study, and then we can move forward with a better plan.
And I just wanted to add one thing. So I don't know if you all saw in the packet on page 43 is the EPA document on asset management for local officials, which is the asset management plan that a town should create. I looked at that, I read it, I went to the EPA webpage and just went, oh my gosh, how in the world do we do this? Serendipity, that's what Scott does, is he helps create these plans. So I just said, oh my gosh, what timing? Because this was just, anyway, so.
And he'll have a lot of the information from what we've already,
Oh, yeah,
Right.
what JDS and SGM have already thrown out there.
yep. So he has all of that stuff, so,
But other things on your list,
right.
Yes,
but
there would be more, yeah, for sure.
but the upper part, so.
Okay. So if we could, let's get a motion to go ahead and let CRWA do the rate study or the asset management plan. So if somebody wants to make a motion to ask them to do that for us
For free.
for free.
I'll make a motion that we provide the information and ask CRWA
Yes,
to conduct an asset management plan.
Okay.
For the town of Paonia.
do you have a second? Second. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none, anything from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to let CRWA do an asset management plan for us for the town of Paonia. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, so what would you like from us, or what do you need from us tonight?
Well, when I left here last Monday, a week and a half ago, you guys were gonna kind of come up with your priorities.
Right.
About how you guys wanted to tackle, I'll say everything. Whether it's water related, whether it's wastewater related. And because I need some guidance as to where you guys want to head, as to what projects, as far as what involvement did you have versus the town doing, or what, because you're gonna need documents. Whether that's, I think the construction standards need to come, and then it's, because if you're gonna have these construction projects, you need something to base it. And and then just what you guys, how you want to tackle this big, long list. Whether it's CIP, whether it's stuff on here, because we can go, whichever direction.
Yes, Mr. Kennedy.
One thing that really concerns me is not having SOPs when you have staff that is all trying to be trained. So to me, that's a really important project that's set aside from everything else we're talking about, because if those SOPs aren't there and someone is on vacation or something like that, how does someone know what has to be done? And it just seems like we're a lot more vulnerable in our plants if we don't have those done. So at least, if nothing else on this list, we get started on those and get on the road to getting that. That's my suggestion.
Sure.
Yeah, Ms. Smith?
Well, I was just gonna say that it's a lot of SOPs, so would we just would need a task list and an estimate of costs, obviously. And then I wanted to add on that the SSG list, there were two things when I did the tour of the plant that were really important, and one was the new pump. There was a pump that needed to be replaced. And there is a meter that I don't know if it's been electrified. It's the, I believe it's the German Springs meter on the pipe coming in. So they seem like two things that if they've not been done, should be done as soon as possible to increase the efficiency of that plant. And there was a lot of electrical, just electric boxes were, hanging off the wall.
Yeah.
So I just wondered if the electrician has been called in to get an estimate.
Yeah, Ms. Ferguson.
Yes.
Okay. So here's the other thing. We are spending a lot of money and I feel like we need a spreadsheet of what we have spent between, let's say November 1st, possibly, because we kind of know through all the disbursements what SGM's been doing with us. We know about the copper and the lead. It wouldn't hurt to have that list. Everything else we have spent since, I'm just gonna say November 1st, someone else could correct me if I'm wrong on that.
On
But
water?
everything having to do with water and wastewater. Because I know we've probably blown the budget for those unfilled positions. And I really feel like we need to know what we have spent. And then I would suggest we have a special meeting really soon to look at the budget for what we continue, because we know we have to get these things done. We have to have the SOPs. I feel like this construction specs is really important. So if we can get some money numbers, if we're gonna go with SGM, or do we put it out to bid? I don't know that we have time, but if we can get some numbers, I just feel like we are between a rock and a hard place, especially with what's going on outside right now too. Would you like a motion?
Ms. Jones, let's get Cindy.
Sorry.
Appreciate your urgency. And I appreciate that you want numbers immediately. But the audit starts in 2 weeks.
I'm sorry, but the audit cannot take precedent over us knowing how much money we've spent and what we have left to spend, because we have to get these things done. So I'm sorry, that's just my opinion, but wow, we need to know. And a lot of it is in the disbursements. It just needs to be organized so we can see what it was spent, what category it was spent under, because I don't know. I just know there's $50,000 in disbursements or something today. But I think we need to know what we've been spending on water and how we're going to continue to pay for it. So I don't know how we do our jobs otherwise. Okay. All right, great.
Well, just remember, I'm only one person.
Well, you have help, do you not?
It will
Sorry,
get it
I
done.
know, I won't argue, but
All right, so it looks like we have at least two priorities, the SOPs and yeah, well, that's the construction and the SOPs are kind of together, and then the budget for right now.
So are you asking SGM to provide costs?
Estimate, yeah, cost
Estimates for
estimates.
that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah,
Last meeting, we also talked about replacing or repairing the PRV valves. We thought
We
that
just-
was a very important thing.
right.
And I know we're getting pricing on that,
Right.
so, but I think that needs to be up there as well.
You got, okay,
So, yeah.
Is there a way for us to create an official request?
Yeah, we can do that.
Brandon, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it would help me, and I'll say this, and Corinne might say it too, and she's probably mentioned it. SJM would like to be, the town engineer for Pale. Right now, we more or less act in that role. But yeah, and I provide contracts for every single project that we have with the town. The only difference would be if we had a master services agreement, we would just get direction from whether, it would be through staff, through Corinne, from you guys. That just says, hey, we need to do this project, what's it gonna cost, and we just get going. Instead of me providing a proposal and a number every time. I would still tell you how much, but I wouldn't have to, there wouldn't be those interim steps. It would speed up the process. Now, I'm just throwing that out there. I can do it, yes, we can do it and provide estimates for this. It just takes a little longer because it's just time to prepare all those estimates.
yeah, Ms. Ferguson.
I have the contract template agreement and plan to bring it to the board at the next meeting.
Okay.
Great. All right, so can we get a motion to have SGM provide us cost estimates on construction standards, SOPs, and we don't have the, that's
That's
different
Yes.
at this point?
What was the third thing you said?
I just had the two.
Oh, construction standards, SOPs.
It was the
The
altitude valve, but
PRV valves are already in the
Yeah.
works.
Right, yeah, that's it.
And the altitude valve is in the works too.
that's already.
The altitude valve,
So
you
that's kind of paid for.
the altitude valve you pay for, it's just sending it to construction. Yes.
Could I just add on, is that pump in the 2 million gallon plant? Has that been looked at?
I thought the pipe that they just brought from. I believe that is the one they've taken it into MTech for repair. It's in
Well, I think that was
May. Yeah, they took it.
a second one to Grand Junction, because he took one to Grand Junction. No,
No,
actually,
this just went, it came back this week. This one was this week. So I have asked them to start, to supply, basically they've started a daily week, multiple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, weekly, monthly report of what they're doing. This is what Benny, Jeremiah, and Jordan have started providing, and I have that. And so that they are doing that. They've been talking and getting information about the bolting down the tanks, the floating tanks. They're waiting for some information on the cost for the actual tie downs, but the bolts and things they've already got them. They're ready to go as soon as they get the other components. Some of those repairs are underway. I'm waiting for the quote on the electrical. Merit Electric came in and did some of the initial emergency electrical repair already when SSG was here under their contract, and are quoting the remaining major electrical that needs to be done in there. And so that's forthcoming. A lot of things are forthcoming and we'll have numbers. We just don't have them yet.
if I might add, it might be really helpful to take this table from and start pulling out the things that are finished and let us know that they're done and make it in bigger font.
I will do that.
Yes, Mr. Tuck.
I would just maybe in lieu of pulling them out, just have a completion.
Yes,
Something.
I'll
Yeah,
strike it through with a
Yep.
date or something.
Right, okay.
Because this is,
All right, so we still need a motion to go ahead and authorize SGM to give us figures on the construction standards instead, operational SOPs. Someone, jump in here.
I'd like to hear from you. So moved.
No, you gotta say it, Nick.
Yes, I.
Give me a deadline though. Please, you gotta give me a deadline.
Okay, how's the quickest you can do it?
2 weeks.
2 weeks, all right,
I got spring break. Yeah.
Okay.
My wife will kill me if I.
all right, let's not have any murders. So construction
Yeah,
standards
we've
and
had enough.
SOPs.
Yes, I move that we hire SGM to do the
Give us quotes,
quotes on the SOPs and
construction.
construction standards
Thank you.
by
Next
when?
meeting.
2 weeks.
Just say next meeting, just say next meeting.
Yes.
By next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second? All right, any further discussion?
Did you get that?
All right, we're going to open it up. If you have questions specifically for Brandon, and then comments on the motion. Yes, Ms. Watts.
I have a question about the motion. When you say construction standards, can you be more specific? I know we have construction standards in our codes, but we have standards for street repair. We have standards for road compaction, of water line replacements, sewer line. So exactly which construction standards are you alluding to for this? Everything in it all, or is it just pertaining to the water system?
Yeah.
So if that could be maybe, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, did you have your hand up, Thomas?
Well, can I just comment on that?
Yes.
So I will say this, is that it could be all, or it could just be infrastructure, well, I'll say infrastructure, water, sewer, in the ground infrastructure related. We could also do streets, we can do those standards as well.
Isn't that what I said?
I'm just making sure, so when I do the number, based on what Suzanne
Right,
said,
exactly.
I just need to know.
Okay, yes, Mr. Thompson.
I suggest sticking to the water.
Yes, water sewer.
Okay,
So you need to amend the motion.
Sewer in the alley going on with that.
Well, that's what we
That's
need.
sewer.
And that would be the sewer.
That's
Water, just.
So if we want to do
Can
a.
Do we need to amend the motion to say
Yeah,
water and
yeah, just
sewer
to add water.
distribution?
Yeah,
Because,
water and sewer construction.
the JDS said the development of construction standards would provide some assurance that distribution system repairs are made to industry standards. So they referred broadly to distribution, but I would like to make sure that it's sewer.
So collection as well.
Yes,
Yeah, all right.
given what's going on out there.
All right, so I
Amend the motion.
amend the motion just to add the word
Amend the motion to add the words, water and sewer distribution
and click.
and collection.
It's water, so it's water distribution and it's sewer collection.
Okay, all right,
Water, I amend the motion to clarify that it is water distribution and sewer collection.
all right. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Further discussion? All right, let's get the amendment in and then we'll take more public comment. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Mr. Brewer.
What about water collection?
Well, it's in there.
It was,
So this is going to be out of order, no particular order, I guess. As far as those PRV valve repairs and stuff goes, in conjunction with looking for leaks, wouldn't it be cost effective to put flow meters on the PRV vaults so that you would have an idea of where you're losing your water? Wouldn't that be a possible way? And if you're in there replumbing anyway, could you put valves on? I don't know, just an idea. You have to keep water in the 1 million gallon tank or it'll heave. You have to do it. You can't, that goes empty. That's really bad. I thought the altitude valve was on order and hung up by supply chain difficulties. And now we're re-engineering.
No, it's engineered. It's ready to go.
It's ordered. It's a thing,
no, it's a construction project. It needs to.
but it hasn't, but I thought it had been ordered.
Not this valve.
No, not
So-
the altitude valve, no.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right. That's why I'm asking the question. As far as the clock plant being online in 2016, there is a requirement to submit operating reports to the state of Colorado Health Department. And none were submitted for the month of February 2016 to indicate that any water was going into any system through that plant.
I said the plant was offline in 2015 when we reclaimed it,
No, the 2016 during the water emergency. You
2019.
just said that it ran during that emergency.
CDP, yes, under CDPHE's boil order, CDPHE was aware that, and when you're under a boil order, some of those regulations are not in effect.
Huh, okay, all right. And there's data being collected now for on the clock spring flow?
No, there's data being collected that's been provided, but no, it's not for the clock. No,
Okay, I thought you said that there's
I
data
did
has
not.
been gotten since. I think.
I did not say that.
Really?
No.
Huh, gee, I wrote that down when you said it, I thought. I'll have to
That
go back
wasn't
and
me
look
who
at
said that.
the video. So the one thing that I think is boggling my mind, and I want to thank Jeff for alluding to it, but the JD Hydro letter starts off number one. There's
You have about
data.
15 seconds left.
There's data that has not, that false data has been submitted to our contractor. Doesn't anybody have any questions about that? How did that happen? Who came up with these spreadsheets?
All right, 2 seconds.
Send it.
Bill. Okay.
No, I'm just getting into the meat of this. This is serious stuff. This brings into question every piece of data that this town has got.
Ms. Ferguson?
So the spreadsheets were filled in with data that when it came to the collection and treatment in the plant, the data was provided to me by our ORC. I put the data into the spreadsheet. I collected the data on the sales and put that information and did the calculation. The information was provided to me. At JDS Hydro and I had several phone calls and meetings following the resignation of our former ORC, at which time we discussed the data that was provided to me, that I provided to them, at which they asked, how do you feel about this information? And I said, I don't have confidence in the numbers that have been provided. And they said, okay, I agree. We discussed what we felt priorities would be. And from that came the letter that stated February 2nd or February 4th, listing what we discussed and considered along with SGM as what the main priorities were and where we needed to shift our focus under the circumstance of where we are right now with our water system.
This doesn't come anywhere close to addressing the question of how do we get this phony data? Who's supplying it? And what else is I mean.
The data was provided to me by the former
Right, by
ORC.
Travis Wilbur,
I
right?
provided to JDS
Right,
Hydro.
and this town is in a world of hurt. You're turning your whole budget upside down because of this deception that's been going on here and nobody's asking the question.
Okay.
I don't understand it. And one more thing that I'm gonna say,
This
you
meeting
can have me
and
hauled out, but I'm gonna say this. This town has gone so long without getting competitive bids on the things that it does, that it's now in a situation that you're not even considering competitive bids for, I don't have any idea, you don't have any idea how much work is going on here. I understand that you're kind of behind the 8 ball and stuff here, but this is indicative of the lack of leadership and competency of your administration.
Okay.
You've been going on for a long time.
All right, I
And
think
you've got
we're
to start
gonna take a
asking
5-minute
questions.
break. Can I get a motion for a 5-minute break, please?
Motion for a 5-minute break.
Do I second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. A motion passes. 5-minute break, people.
You should be addressing.
All right. Yes, Mr. Mark.
right.
3 minutes.
Let me boot up before you start my time, please. I'm back from the recess.
Make a comment.
No, you've already done it on this.
Oh, no, I just thought it would be good to put a timer at the podium, so,
You know, I was looking at shot clocks today, believe me.
okay, so we can keep an eye, because it's.
Right, I was gonna get
Do this and just turn it around.
big one right here and start it.
My glasses are strong enough.
Yeah.
I'll turn it around.
It is on.
I apologize, my notes are online. Next year. Okay, so you kind of combine two agenda items.
Right.
So I might push my time. First, regarding the discussion about the lower plant being closed, not affecting the JDS study, it would affect demand by having that plant shut down. We had voluntary restrictions the past 2 years. In the middle of summer, we had reduced the demand. So we having that plant offline will affect the studies in other ways than just the metered water coming into the plant. And just to Brian's point that we have a lack of information, we had no, we were misled about this study. We're still going through responses. The boil water advisory in 2019 does not mean the plant was online. It just means the water was flowing through it. It was not filtering anything or treating anything. It was creek water. And I would like to hear verification about how this letter from JDS Hydro came to be produced, because they indicate that it was Josh Moore that indicated that data was bogus. So I think we should hear from John Plumstarns if we can. Okay, so this letter was on February 4th, and it is now March 10th. I think that your priorities as, I guess it's mayor who sets the agenda for excluding this and not making a priority, speaks to your leadership, to your priorities. There were 4 meetings between now and then where you could have brought this up.
He was availability,
Please,
Mr. Markle,
please,
availability. You cannot
We
make
could have
somebody.
discussed it without an engineer. And regarding the data itself, I requested data. JDS asked for data on January 30th, 2020. That was the kickoff meeting for this project. I asked February 10th, February 24th, March 24th, May 3rd, May 19th, June 16th, June 16th. I made a Cora. June 30th meeting, July 21st meeting. These are all AWC meetings. I finally got my Cora request fulfilled in 22. I would love to ask James Plumstarns if he would like to have 5 years of production data from both of those plants. I have it scanned. I scanned it, spent 2 hours doing it myself. It's not typed. It's all handwritten. We need to hire somebody else to do it. This project cost $95,000 and it's been 2 years. We don't have an answer to the water moratorium.
Okay, you got 17 seconds, Mr. Markle.
Well, I'm on a different agenda item now. So the SOPs were supposed to be a project priority for Travis Loberg. On that June 16th meeting, I asked him to his face if we had SOPs for those plants, and he said yes. Twice I asked him. For the raw water spring repairs, these are items on the SGM list. We budgeted $110,000 in the past 3 years for spring repairs. And I think hopefully you've all seen the photos of what they look like. That work was not done. Okay. And finally, for the Colorado Rural Water Association, that you guys just voted on, I think owe a great debt of gratitude to Suzanne Watson for bringing that guy's contact information to me. I don't ask for thank yous. I prefer to give them. And I think that the work that Scott will do for us, hopefully, will be immensely valuable. And it's Suzanne's initiative that brought that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have a motion on the table Yes, we do for,
Oh, right.
yeah,
For his work.
for his work on SOPs and construction standards for the water system. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right,
Well, it's providing you guys fee estimates.
Right, exactly.
Right, right. It's not doing that.
no, exactly. All right, so let's move back up to the top of our agenda. Announcements, the municipal quarterly will be on March 31st of this month, from 9:30 to 3 o'clock in Delta. If any board members can possibly make, this is, so all the, it's March 31st, 9:30 till 3 in Delta. If any board members can possibly make this, this is a wonderful meeting because all the towns show up at it and county officials and hospital district and all of these entities come and give updates and share information. And it's really valuable and everyone is invited. Yeah, it has to be an open meeting, so. So yeah, I would encourage anyone, I'm gonna try and make it for sure. All right, recognition, yes,
Go ahead.
yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not very good. I wanted to make a motion on the water stuff before we move on too much farther.
Okay,
I wanted to make a motion that we ask the resident water users to consider water conservation measures in their own home use by doing some public outreach.
okay. Yeah, I was gonna put it in my little shopper blurb this week.
Can there be a formal request from the town? I'd like to make a motion, we make a formal request from the town that water users try to use water conservation measures.
We can make public announcements and everything unless we pass a resolution or something, we can't mandate it.
I'm not asking for a mandate, but the number one short-term recommendation in the JDS hydro report was encouraging. Yeah.
Give me a motion.
That's what we're looking for. So
Ask for a second.
what is your specific motion?
I make a motion that the town make an official request to water users to encouraging water conservation within the community.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Discussion from the board? Yes,
I wonder, could we elaborate in that as to why? Because usually that happens in the summer, and I think people are gonna wonder why in, where are we, March, are we being asked to do that? So I think it'd be very good to explain that we're working off of springs with one plant, and that's all we have. Is that the point? Is that the reason, based on their,
Yeah.
that we don't have the springs that feed the 1 million gallon plant?
no, it's more that we just have one skid and one plant.
Yeah. And do we know when that second skid will be up and running?
I requested an update today, but they said it would take 2 weeks before they got all the parts in, so it should be coming up very soon.
Okay, then that sounds like, and even with the second skid, we still have a potential lack of water just because of the springs slowing down this time of year. I mean, isn't that another big part of it? Have the springs slowed down?
Right now, we're still receiving more water than we're.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been too
But
long.
not by much.
Yeah, it says marginally in the JDS.
So what, so mostly I would want that voluntary thing to explain why they're being asked to do it.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion from the board? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Mr. Burton.
So is this a permanent request for conservation? Or it just until we get things straightened out, or?
That's a great question. I'm just, the number one short-term recommendation from the JDS hydro letter was that we ask the public to institute water conservation measures that were just ahead of supplies, just ahead of demand.
So, and I think that's really good on a short-term basis, but I think as a general measure to ask people to use less, when there's a lot of water, you're just cutting the revenue, which is going to give you more reason to raise rates. Because, when there's a lot of water coming through, there's really no organic reason to not use it, really. Because if we had a reservoir, we could save it, but we don't. And so I'm not arguing against it as a short-term thing, but I want to say I think it deserves more discussion if it's not specifically targeted at this current situation, I guess is the way I would put it.
So perhaps in the language, thank you, Bill. Perhaps in the language page that you're requesting, we include a statement that we're preparing for, a summer dry spell or something to that effect.
No, all right, yes, Ms. Patterson.
Christina Patterson, Price Road. If you're going to add things into this motion and be comprehensive about it, then I would say that you have to include negligence on the past ORC for not doing their job, for getting us down to one skid, barely. So if you want to put that in and have the public have a real good rendering of what went on, then maybe so, but I think anything else would be disingenuous, and I don't agree with water conservation. That's not what our problem has been here. It's been negligence on the ORC's part.
Okay, Ms. Watson.
Sorry, a lot of cooks here. I was wondering if maybe in the wording, you would just take it directly from that JDS Hydro letter and say, because, the town contractor has identified this, so it's not just our words, it's actually kind of based on actual language. So people know that there was like we actually have a study that has come up. You know what I'm trying to say? Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Marcos.
Similar but different to what Suzanne just said. I don't think you need to include it all. You could summarize it, but if you read the recommendations, the paragraph that precedes the recommendations specifically say ORC resignation leaves the current contract operator in an exceedingly challenging position, etc. And they also indicate that these are interim recommendations based on current understanding of the water system. These are not complete long-term capital improvements, rather they're intended to help the town's efforts in the near term. So I don't think it would be appropriate to say we're expecting a dry spell or any such thing. I don't think you need to fabricate anything at all. You can just say exactly what you've been told if you want to say it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Ms. Patterson in the back. Corinne, you have your hand up?
Shereen Patterson, Rio Grande. It's time to stop the deceit and the fraud here in this town. And it starts with being honest with the people. And all of you.
Okay. Did you have something to say, Mr. Compton?
Yeah, I'd like to amend my motion that we encourage water conservation until the lower treatment and 1 million gallon finished water storage facilities are brought online.
All right, great. Second. All right. All in favor of the amendment to add until the water treatment and lower and the 1 million is online?
Are we voting?
Yes.
Yeah. All in favor of just the amendment to add the bit about the water treatment system?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, that motion passes. So now we have the main motion, which is to make an official request for conservation from the community because until the treatment plant and the 1 million gallon are fully back online. All right, further discussion from the board? Yes, Mr. Casey.
I think the suggestion that we include the language from the JDS Hydro report is wise.
Okay,
Right.
okay. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? All right, that motion passes. All right, now back up to recognition of visitors and guests. Yes,
Apologies that the amendment to the order of business was disbursements before we went back.
oh, I am so sorry, you are correct. Let's go to disbursements. Thank you very much. Can we get a motion, please? All right, it's page, no, page 40, yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve accounts payable in the amount of $53,266.35. The approval of the Norris retirement payment scheduled for March 26th of $1,680 even. The credit card expenses of $1,635.09. The transfer to payroll, the transfer from ops of $17,428.18, and a direct deposit into payroll of the same amount, plus a payment of payroll taxes of $14,967.74.
All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion from the board? Yes. Mr.
I have questions under the specific disbursements.
Yes.
And hang on one second, I had some notes. So let's see, I was just curious who drives the 2014 Ford?
A lot of things wrong.
Not anybody lately.
There's,
I mean, is it had to go in for, I just wonder, is it administration? Public Works uses it, and so I was just curious and what had to be done to it. That's all right. So this came up today. I was wondering what Root is a Root excavating pipe purchase for 7177. I was wondering what kind of pipe to replace water
Water line.
pipe or sewer pipe?
Water line.
Water line. And is it water line as for distribution in town water line or water line coming off the 2 million? 6 or 8 inch, I guess should be the.
It's both. It's 6 and 8 inch.
Okay.
So like we've heard a lot lately about supply chain issues. So when Roop had a project they worked on, they ordered, had to wait a long time to get material, had excess material, and sold it at cost direct to town. So we have it in our inventory.
And I was curious about, now that Brandon is here, I had a question about the SGM on here. I'm curious, what more are you doing on the 2 million gallon tank recoating? I just wonder what is continuing to happen with that.
That was correspondence with CDPHE about if the project moves forward. So this was that billing cycle would have been from mid-January to mid-February.
Okay.
So it would have been correspondence that we were having with CDPHE about what that application would look like. And following up with them, obviously the project's been put on hold, but that's what that was for.
Okay.
And just Corinne and Cindy can vouch for it too. So I speak for all of SGM's invoices has detailed descriptions of what work we do and itemized by hour by hour.
Okay. So I have another question about the other one that's on here, the valve box.
Yep.
What's happening with, which one is it?
So the valve vault box, that's the altitude valve. So that's.
Oh, it's the altitude valve.
That's just the name of the project. We call it the valve vault. This is how we set it up, but that's the altitude valve for the lower tank.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking it was one of the 9.
And that was finishing up. It's, that was the last effort to get it ready to go.
Okay, thank you. And I think those are my, so one other question, we've been talking about SCADA. So there's the lease, the SCADA lease. I just wondered, is that for the 2 million gallon plant? With the Brown Hill engineers at the top.
Yes.
And so that SCADA is operational and it is being used and has been,
Yes.
right? Okay. And then one other question, what is CCNC just below that for $100 annual membership fee? I'm just curious what CCNC is.
We're looking at CCNC. That's our membership for I'm looking at that. Consolidated Communications Networks of Colorado, it's police department.
Oh, good, thank you. One last question. So I noticed the 5,600 for the landfill, which I'm assuming is coming from the
Some of that, yes.
the appliances and the electronics and tires.
Yes, some of that is.
So this is just an aside, but we should talk about spring cleanup when you get to that.
Oh, yes.
Because I'm not gonna be a fan. Anyway, thank you.
All right, any other
That's it.
questions from the board? All right, questions from the public? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to accept disbursements. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that motion passes. Now we're going to go back at the top of the agenda. And recognition of visitors and guests. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on something that is not on the agenda? Yes, Mr. Berger.
So I had submitted an agenda request to talk about the conversion of the Hayes Drug and the Elks Lodge to multifamily housing, and was told that it would come up in March when the attorney was on board. And here we are, and here he is, and it's not on the agenda. And so I just want to throw out, I have a letter from the building inspector that I quoted in another matter, where he basically says he has nothing to do with zoning enforcement. And it is my observation, I could be wrong, that he's going around and handing out building permits on Main Street and other places in town for projects that are, I think, violations of the town's zoning code. And these things are being looked at kind of in the light of the water moratorium, but to me, the water moratorium is a factor that would be considered in a special review or a variance. And we've got boilerplate zoning things that are being ignored. The building inspector is disavowing responsibility, which I think leaves it on Corinne's shoulders. And I don't think it's being followed up on. I have no evidence that it is. So,
Well, we got it for the next agenda. Thank you.
time's a waste.
Yes, Ms. Watson?
I was gonna write an email, but it's a little bit complicated. So I will send you all an email, but I found a Scrivener error in our code that's kind of serious. And it's table 16-2, schedule of requirements residential districts. And it's on the yard requirements, and it's the minimum lot coverage. That's incorrect. Our old LDR said maximum lot coverage. So it doesn't make sense to have a code that says you have to cover a minimum of 30% of your lot with the building. So I'm wondering if that's something the code company did incorrectly, and perhaps they could change it. So I don't know if you're aware of it, but I think it's kind of gives completely different implications to what people could do in their yards, and it can be scary. So I don't know who attends to that, but do you want me to write a letter too, or? Yeah, that would be good. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, anyone else? Yes.
Frederick Zimmer, German Creek Drive. Relative to Mr. Bruner's point earlier, just now, I can say that the building inspector he is not responsible for determining zoning, but he does conduct his inspections relative to zoning. And I can say that I have always had to deal with zoning requirements, zoning change, and it does happen here in town. So to just say, as far as you know, it's not happening is kind of not helpful. You know, either have the information and make a worthwhile point, or don't.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zimmer. Yeah. All right. Yes.
Tina Patterson. I was wondering if commercial places have to have building permits posted in front for the work that they're doing. Like Hayes Drug, I don't see one. The Masonic Building, I don't see one. The other two that are doing, the other two on Main Street on Grand Avenue do have permits. So I was just wondering, if you apply for a permit and get a building permit, are you required to post it in front of your building?
It is required to be posted, yes.
Okay, so I was just wondering then if Hayes Drugs has a building permit. Or,
Yes, they do.
Yes, we do.
oh, and so why isn't it posted in
It
front of
fell
them?
down. There's a lot of dust and it fell to the floor.
I've never
We'll
seen
make
it
sure
there.
everybody back up for you.
And also the Masonic building? Does it
I
have-
can't speak to that.
Okay, yes, let's not go back and forth.
Yes.
All right, anyone? All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I have comments on.
All right, so if we are going to be making changes to anything on the consent agenda, it needs to be pulled off of the consent agenda. So what do you want to pull off of the consent agenda?
I have a comment on page 2 of the February 22nd meeting minutes,
Okay,
page 2 of 4, actually 10 of the packet.
okay,
And then on page 12, but I don't know if it's the same meeting minute, sorry. And it is.
okay, so we want to pull the February 22nd meeting off?
And I have a comment on page 13, which is the next February 28th, but let me look at that comment. And by the way, thank you for putting in the A's and I's and nays table. That's very helpful. Thank you. I do have a addition on page 13 as well.
Okay, so we want to pull off both 222 and 228, correct?
Correct.
All right. All right, so they are off the consent agenda. The only thing then on the consent agenda is the 228 work session special meeting, SGM presentation. All right, can we get a motion to accept that?
I'd like to move that we accept the consent agenda as modified.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then let's go back to the regular minutes for 222.
At the bottom of page 10. At the very bottom, motion made by trustee Smith, seconded by trustee Knutson to adopt the ordinance 01-222 to include changes as noted. I think it'd be helpful to include in here, and I believe I had it in the motion that I wrote up, that it was to remove 2 of the whereases in the whereas section. And it's actually the 2nd and 5th whereases were approved to be deleted.
Okay, do you have other changes in
And
that
then the
document?
next, on page 12. In keeping with Robert's Rules of Order, under presentation of information regarding community room sound system, motion made by trustee Budinger, seconded by trustee Knutson to table this item. And I believe the proper term is to continue.
Yes.
So I'd like to see the table.
The only thing I'm going to say is that the motions are, when it's written, it's because that's the verbiage that was used. So I wanted to be
Okay.
clear if
So that was.
if they say table, that's why we put that in there. So it is good to know and to try to correct it moving forward.
For us in the future. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead. If those are the only things on that document,
Yes.
then let's go ahead and get a motion to approve the regular minutes with changes for 222.
Yes. Want me to make that?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm looking for my next comment. Sorry. I make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes for February 22nd with my modification.
All right, do I have a second? Further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now to the special minutes.
On page 13, it's the motion made by trustee Smith, seconded added agenda item, meaning to discuss a policy. It says to regarding viewing all facilities of the town. It should say to discuss a policy providing for trustees to view all facilities of the town.
Okay,
And again, maybe the motion, I don't remember. I don't think we were writing motions for that
Yeah,
special
we
meeting.
need to start writing motions
Yeah.
again.
Because you say it, and then you write it, and then I have to go back and listen, and I have to go off what is said, not what you write.
Yeah.
So you'll write it, and then you'll say it, and then you change it, and then you want it like it's on the paper, but I have to go off what's said. So,
You have to go off what's said, so maybe we shouldn't be writing it.
well, you should, but if you're gonna write it, read it like you write it.
Here's the problem with that. We are being asked, we make a motion, all this goes on, and we're asked to write the motion down, and then business moves on. It's really not efficient to expect a trustee to write a motion and get it absolutely correct while new business has continued.
Well,
So I don't know if
unfortunately,
there's another way to do it.
Robert's rules say it's better to write the motions.
I'll just say, I'm observing the meetings and hopefully, I've only attended once before by Zoom, but I think as we move forward, I might have some recommendations that may or may not be appropriate for the changes to the meeting rules, just kind of on the heavy use of oral motions in the meeting, and having for your main action items some kind of maybe some better use of prepared resolutions with kind of containing what you're actually directing. A lot of the motions strike me as really just providing direction to staff on certain things to conduct. When you're dealing with more substantive things, it might be better placed in a resolution. So anyway, I just think that note that, you have a concern over how we do this. I'll help you guys work on that.
Okay. Thank you. So with that in mind, are we stuck with the way this was worded, which doesn't really explain what the motion was about, and perhaps we have to live with it in what's on page 13.
All right, we've confirmed the wording, so we're just going to go ahead and continue this agenda item on to the next meeting until we get it confirmed.
Okay.
All right, next we have staff reports. Half an hour, people.
I'll go fast.
Yes.
So I have a written report. In addition to the written report, I did want to make the board aware that I provided a request to all of the contractors that the town currently uses and any contractor that we used within the last several years, a request for basically their bid sheet to provide information on their bids, which was the direction from the board to do that at the beginning of March. So that has been completed and sent out to all of our contractors, regardless of the type of contractor. Even home construction contractors received our bid request or their cost sheet request. Also, what was provided tonight in addition to the report for the board was a copy of the CDPHE's no further action regarding the complaint at the sewer plant. We've taken care of all of those issues. Also provided was I haven't tasked our public works director to attend meetings yet because he's still getting his feet under the job and staff and working on things. But I did ask him to give me just a real quick list down and dirty of some of the things he's been working on, and minor and trivial in comparison to some of the projects the town is dealing with. But as the majority of this board has seen the town facilities and has been to the town shop and seen outside around the town shop, I did have him snap some pictures as well of, if I'm just gonna pass around, of some of the work they've been doing to do the cleanup and things there, also in response to CIRSA's audit that they did last year. So you can see some of the cleanup and the work that they do have going. So quickly under that public works part, I know it's part of that, and then under the report that he's working with staff on organizing and confirming the inventory for the shop. And part of that is prepping lists of needs to properly outfit vehicles and things so that they have what they need, telling us what they need in their vehicles. So they're not running around wasting time, going back to the shop looking for things. There's a lot of wasted time looking for materials. He was a little bit shocked really at having no idea where anything was and really needing to go through and look at that. He's been investigating and bringing some apps and talking with our IT about some apps that he wanted to look at that will make it easier for them inventorying. Part of this is a scanning app so that there would be scanners in the facilities where they store things so that when they use something, you scan it and it automatically feeds an ongoing inventory, incoming, outgoing, so that it's trackable. He's also looking at an app that tracks vehicle maintenance and mileage. He's working on the CERSA compliance and recommendation list. That's part of this cleanup at the town shops. Of course, pothole repairs as weather permits, street sweeping equipment. They started street sweeping, but a piece of the equipment needs maintenance. Unfortunately, it will turn one way, but they can't get the arm to release and turn the other direction. It's on our brand new John Deere equipment. So he's working with John Deere under our warranty to get that corrected. They have been doing some, but it's mostly with brooms and shovels and manual labor, but they are out doing it. They dealt with a water valve break that we had near Grand Avenue about 2 weeks ago. Sewer repair in the alley, trash routes, that's going normal, locates, meter reads, standard stuff. He's familiarizing himself with upcoming bid and processes for sidewalk. This is the year of sidewalk replacement, and street repairs, and assessing costs for park projects, including Apple Valley Park. Just a rough estimate. If you have specific questions, happy to answer them. Police, you'll have a blotter in the next packet. It will be in the next packet. And let's see. So here's information I received on the water side. They have pulled out the broken piping. The pump has been taken and now brought back from MTech so that they can get that installed. Let's see, they have pipe on hand to fix a broken piece of pipe that is also in there. And it only cost $100 for the anchoring bolts and things that they need to anchor down those floating tanks. And they're pricing the anchor straps, and then they'll have those ordered and get that part of their project done. Like I stated, they are compiling a list of their activities so that we can provide that to the board. We are discussing having them come to a meeting so you can meet them, put faces to the names and names to the faces, and hear from them directly what they're working on and their enthusiasm. I can tell you having them out with a couple of different people and having them had some conversations with JDS Hydro. JDS Hydro told me today that they were very impressed with what we've done, very impressed that we were able to get people who are pretty smart guys and quick to learn, willing to learn, and wanting to get certifications. Mr. Archuleta, I plan to have information to the board as far as his costs, but I can let you know that right now, Mr. Archuleta, who is an A license operator and has been operating in the town for a very long time, operator license numbers currently go up into 5 digits. His is a 3-digit number, and he is, it's approximately, mileage varies, but he's approximately charging about $1,000 to $1,500 a month for his services right now. He does this out of a dedication and not a need to live at this point in his life. And so he came highly recommended. CDPHE highly recommended him. Everyone that I've spoken to highly recommends him. And he's on site a minimum of 2 days a week, available via phone 24 hours a day, and speaks to Jeremiah and Jordan on the ground every day, giving direction. And I'm pleased with him right now. He stated he is looking at the RFP and he is willing to stay on as long as the town needs him, including to the point that any of our current 2 employees go through the 3 to 5 year process to get their licenses. So.
All right, thank you. Questions from the board for Brent? Yes.
Just I wanted to remind about the breaking news about Chris coming in next week and able to be available for the public.
Yes.
Chris Lowe is our recruiter for the police chief. He's coming to town to get input from citizens or from board members and wants to meet with people individually. He'll be available, I think, Monday night and most of the day on Tuesday.
Yes.
How would people coordinate times if they want time with him?
He didn't specify outside of meeting with staff and any board members that wanted to meet, he would make himself available. But if there are specific times that work well for specific people in the community, we can try to harness that into a specific time and have him here. People could come in and meet with him. Provide information.
Yeah, he wasn't clear. He just said he was going to be in town on Monday and Tuesday. So we're not real sure, but people that have passion about it.
Right.
they could email me or Corinne.
Anything else from the board?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Thompson.
Corinne, have you identified where the sidewalk repairs and street repairs will be for the upcoming repair cycle?
He's not giving me the list. I provided him the sidewalk survey that was done many years ago and the scribbled list that was never completed on all the places that have been repaired and installed. And we're going to come back with that.
Thanks.
Yes.
Didn't the SGM inventory analysis really point us to what we need for sidewalk repairs? It seems like that was pretty thorough, and it seems like we should be going off that list a lot.
It hasn't.
Okay, good.
Okay, anything else? Yes.
I just had a question on the RFP for construction contractor
Yes.
and for the end of the month, how that's coming.
The RFP for construction contractor.
Yeah, and we made a motion to have a RFP out for construction contractors so we can start getting bids from other contractors for things like what Roop is doing out back.
My understanding from that was that that was part of the conversation of wanting to know what the costs were for the contractors when they do construction. And that's that cost list that the direction was given. So I may have misunderstood the direction from the board then, because that is what I thought I had done.
I can go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it was to actually put an RFP out so we get new bids from more construction folks, because you're.
But from the discussion then that took place at the meeting, you can't bid a project without knowing what the project is. So you asked that I get lists from the contractors on what their costs are for mobilization of equipment, what they charge for staffing and things like that. And so that is what was sent out to all the contractors.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. I mean, that's the motion was for an RFP, but that makes sense. But so in this case, you sent those bid sheets out to a wide range of people that you know work in the area?
And that we've used, any contractors that we've used received it. Any contractors that asked to be on our list received it, either via regular mail or an email if I had email.
Okay.
And I'm happy to publish it as well. I can put it on the website, do a blurb, a little thing in the newspaper letting contractors know that it's available for submittal to the town.
Yeah, I think that would be great, just because that would be what you would do with an RFP.
Right.
So yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, anything from the public? Yes, Ms. Watson.
Suzanne Watson. So I had some questions about page 20. You mentioned you're getting ready to do the interview for the board interviews for the RFPs for the ORC. And I wanted to know, how does that process work when you're accepting sealed bids in a thumb drive? Are things opened up and the thumb drive put in and then projected for all? I mean, how do you keep it sealed until you have the official opening? That's one question. And that was under the administrative report. And the other one was, it was interesting today because we heard that an ORC can be the operator and responsible charge and allow untrained workers under him, but he's risking his license by doing that. So it sounds like this current ORC doesn't mind untrained staff or untrained staff working under him, but I'm kind of curious how that works in the RFP, because how many contractors would be willing to allow town staff who don't have the training yet and risk their license to potential mistakes from our employees? And I mean, I don't know if they're supposed to bring their own staff with them to operate the system, or are they responsible for training and potentially incurring a liability on their own licenses? And I was kind of wondering, oh, and then one more question is, has anybody submitted anything yet for the position? But I'm just wondering how contractors look at this, and do they actually know the whole scenario of what they might be up with, and how can you fairly say, well, this guy's doing it, so he doesn't mind it, but these people don't really know what we're expecting. And, you know, I'm just kind of curious about that. It seems kind of muddled. Thanks.
Thank you.
So the flash drives are in the sealed envelope along with the paper copies. The bid packets are opened at the bid opening. The flash drives are simply a way so that the town has the bids on a, so that when we put them in, we've got them on a clean copy. We're not scanning and copying when we're supplying to the board and such. So they're in the sealed envelope. Under Rule 100, which is from CDPHE, that's what allows the designation and delegation of certain tasks under a task plan for an ORC. That's standard practices, and I don't know of any ORC that hasn't utilized this function and capacity. And yes, that is addressed specifically about whether it would be in the ORC's staff through a company, if it was a large company that had multiple employees, or if it was a smaller company or ORC like Mr. Archuleta, they are aware that we have staff. It's in there that we have on town staff that is working within the plants and interested in getting licenses. And I believe there may have been a third question, or it was a comment, so you'll have to.
Have people submitted anything?
No.
All right. Anything else from the public? Yes, Mr. Martin.
Well, thanks. The acquisition of materials needed for water wastewater treatment, filter tech visits, and pipestone supply. Do we have estimates for those? Are they going to be inside the $5,000 range for the purchasing policy? And I have some others.
No, I don't have estimates for those yet.
Okay.
Except for the filter tech that was already approved by the board.
Same question about the fees from CDPHE associated with all the stuff SSG found. I don't know if we had a total for those yet.
I'm sorry, you have to be more specific. Fees for,
fines from CDPHE.
we have no fines from
Do you have
CDPHE.
any fines for any of the violations that Brianna?
Absolutely not.
Okay, cool. Those are to be done. I'd like to know if we have, actually, it's the same question Paige had. If there's a current status of expenditures versus budget categories. I don't know if that's like a running tally that you guys keep that might be able to be produced, but I think it would be really helpful to see how this stuff stacks up against the budget in real time, or at least quarterly. Just so that we can know where the spending is going. On the chart, and this is the Funds Plus, I guess.
Yes.
Is that still part of your?
Yes.
Okay. You have one thing on there, number 2 indicates it's a police department expenditure by the note, but the chart shows that it's an administrative expenditure.
The 7 HP computers.
The number 2, yeah.
Update police department desktops. Those were administrative. They were replacing the computers in the police department.
Right, but then on your spreadsheet, it says it's in the administrative row. There are $350 worth of printers for Cindy in 2019 and $250 for printers for Cindy in 2020. There's 14 mics that we don't use anymore at $800 each. I don't know if you guys remember how much time we spent talking about the $500 for picking in the park. Right. Again, priorities might be important. And that's a different part. There's also a shredder that was in the expenditures for $3,000.
Yes.
It's an industrial size shredder instead of the ones, we had one blow up on them.
I remember that. I wonder if it might be more appropriate to use less paper.
Possibly.
You guys go through a lot of paper.
We use a substantially less paper than we used to.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, let's move on to treasurer's report and or director's report. We have questions from the board from this. Yeah.
I don't have it in front of me, but I remember last year that the trustees were not able to see the audit before it was finalized. So I'd like to ask that we see a draft copy of the audit before it's finalized so we can look it over. And I have to tell you, I've never read an audit. I've read this audit. It is an amazing amount of information that is really, really helpful. And I think having a look at that is going to help the budget for this next year. But there's so much in there that is, everyone, I say read it. There was so much information on projects that were and weren't done, and an accounting of the projects that were done in one place. Anyway, I found it very helpful, and I think it'd be very nice to see the draft and have an opportunity to review it and ask questions before it's finalized.
Following the last audit, a motion was made and passed by the board to receive that draft as soon as it was available instead of waiting for the finalized document.
Great, so it's already done. Thank you. Oh, I was just curious, what's the parts inventory that's listed? I don't have it in front of me. I haven't gotten to the right page.
The goals, focus, and improvements for next month, parts inventory processes.
Yes.
That is specific to Cindy's part, working with Corey Heininger, our Public Works Director, on some of the updates and things that he wants to make to better track parts inventory.
Great. And that's probably the same thing with the vehicle equipment tracking processing. Is that also following up on what he's looking at?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else from the board? Okay, seeing none, anything from the public on the finance director's report? Yes, Mr. Tracy.
I wanted to point out that we're going to lose a trustee that's done a lot of service to us, and that is Trustee Budinger.
Yes.
And that I want the board to be aware that I'm a check signer and Mary's a check signer, but it's nice to have another check signer. It would be good for the new board to get on and make that decision, but we're going to have a lot of decisions to make when that new board comes on, and this is one big hole that's going to have to be filled.
I'm only gonna miss one meeting.
All right.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you. All right, anything else? All right, we have.
I just have one quick question. So, I'm sorry to come up too soon. So where was the finance report in here? Because
It's right under the town administrator's report.
Okay, I see Public Works.
Page 22.
Yeah, page 20.
Finance Director.
Oh, okay, page 22. Oh, so it's under the.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
You're welcome. All right, we have 11 minutes left. And next up is our advisory water committee meeting follow-up discussion.
Okay, I'm on. So at the meeting that we had, I believe it was on February 17th, there's quite a bit of discussion about staffing, and the advisory board would like to have the trustees consider that advisory water committee members, except for the trustee member, would like to be involved in the process for hiring future staff positions tasked with managing the town utilities, meaning water and sewer. Discussion revolved around being able to review the applications submitted, and the non-trustee members would like to be involved in the interview process. This is something new, and it could be a moot point for a little bit, but that was something they wanted brought to the board for the board's consideration.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up is, so Thomas will not be on he is the lone in-town water user represented. We now have 5 public people on the committee. We have an in-town or an out-of-town ORC and our out-of-town user. So we actually have an opening for 2 public in-town users and 1 to fill in any of those 3. So I'm just putting this out there that we probably need to do a request for interest, letters of interest at some point.
It's on the task list so that we can start getting them in for when that actually goes in effect, because of course that ordinance that was passed doesn't go into effect till 30 days after publication.
Right, and it's not in effect yet.
Right.
Exactly. But I wanted to bring that up just as a tickler that we're going to have to be finding 3 people.
Yes, we already have 3 letters too. So.
And say it again.
We already have 3 letters.
Oh, good, excellent. And the last thing was scheduling. So in order to facilitate the advisory water committee recommendations coming to the board in a more timely way, I was thinking that we need to pick a day to schedule those meetings consistently so people know when they are. And I threw out the last Wednesday of the month. Because then we would have enough time to get something on the agenda in a timely fashion that came out of that Wednesday meeting for the first meeting in the following month. And in most months that works. Now, I don't believe the committee is considering meeting every month, but that at least would be a placeholder every month for a meeting. And that's something we can decide, but I just wanted to bring that up, that we thought we would be more consistent. So you have time to consider a recommendation as an agenda topic. Thank you.
That's a good idea. Thank you. All right, any questions for Paige? Yes, Mr. Knudsen.
I'd really like to hear more about the pros and cons of the interview piece, because you do a deep dive as an elected official into the actual mechanics of the workings. And I can see that for board positions, like when we're hiring a police chief, when we're hiring legal counsel, those types of things. Yes, we should be in interviews. But I don't know. I remember reading about other jurisdictions. And I remember reading about a town administrator who was hiring a police chief, and there was no board involvement at all because that person reported directly to. So, I'm just throwing out the thing about personnel wise. Do we really want to get that deep with that piece? Maybe looking at the resumes might be good, making recommendations about that. But actually sitting and interviewing the candidates as a candidate, I think they would get confused about who their boss is. And I don't want to politicize. I mean, there's enough of that going around, politicizing the staff, that I think it would be starting down that road. So that's just me as one board member giving them feedback that it's great if they want to go with resumes. In my mind, I think that'd be great to get that input, but sitting in the interview, I think, confuses it for future employees about who they report to, how much they report to a commission or a board.
Do you have a comment on that, Mr. Conklin?
I'm sorry, which position is this for?
This is
Staff
for
positions.
Yeah, ORC. It's a staff
Yeah.
position. It reports to the town administrator.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll probably hear more on this after the new board is seated, but one thing to always be mindful is kind of roles and responsibilities of the trustees versus staff. And, on your normal staff hiring positions, that's largely a function of your town administrator or the department heads that they're working under. For department heads or other higher level positions in town, there might be kind of a more public process in terms of committee and trustee review and input on that decision. It's not normally a function of the advisory committee to participate in review of staff hirings. I don't frankly know what the advisory water committee's bylaws says to what their roles and responsibilities are, but as a general matter, that is more administrative staff decisions that review of those hiring things and part of that process. So.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. First.
So the board is aware at the advisory water meeting, when this was brought up, I did state that I had no issue with exactly what Trustee Knudsen was stating, which was having, when applications came in, having some kind of review and input on any pros, cons, questions maybe to ask in an interview from those that are on the advisory water committee. But I also was in agreement that it was not necessarily appropriate to have a large number of individuals that may be very skilled and talented when it comes to looking at the data and the ordinances in our water system, but it may not be appropriate for them to participate in the interviewing and hiring of what is needed on the staff level for the town.
Anyone else on the board? Okay, anything from the public? All right, we have 4 minutes. Do we want to try and tackle anything else or just call it quits for today?
Could I just ask for a clarification?
Yeah.
And again, I was being the messenger for the public portion of the AWC, because I obviously can't be involved in any of that. So could I bring back that there might be, and it might be okay to review applications when there is a utilities person? Or do you want, does the board agree with that, or do you want that to be thought about? And I know we have to leave soon. I just don't know what to take back to them.
When there's training for the new board, I think we should invite the water commission to come into that training so they can get the same perspective about what's a staff responsibility and what's a commission responsibility and what's a board responsibility. And that might be the best way to deal with that.
I mean, well, we're gonna have all new people, so it'll be kind of a new thing.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, but we'll be doing that training in May or June, and I don't think we're gonna be hiring for May or June again. Hopefully not.
All right, so I would like, if we could possibly look at number 11, because Tammy was sitting on the Colorado Open Records Policy Review with me, and so if I could get another board member to volunteer so we can sit down with Corinne and go over the policy and make sure that we are in line with the ordinance as well as. There's only two of us left. We got two people here to do their last piece of official business.
Lori's gonna be missing at the next meeting.
I'll be here. Nice.
Yeah.
But then concept.
I need a volunteer. Somebody put your head on the block.
Open meetings?
This is about our core policy.
The core policy is just reviewing the core policy and making sure we're in line with everything.
It isn't 3 hours all day.
No, it's not gonna be 3
Okay,
hours.
I'll do it.
All right, good. That's taken care of. All right, we have 1.5 minutes left. Yes, Mr. Thompson.
I just wanted to ask the board if you all had an opportunity to see the new tree board logo.
Oh, I love it.
The tree board is asking for the trustees to take a look at the new logo for the tree board for board approval so that they can move forward with using a logo to market tree board activities. And if you haven't taken a look at it, please do, and maybe we can do an approval
I emailed it.
at the next meeting.
Put it in the agenda packet.
I will for the next.
Yeah,
meeting.
cool.
Yeah, okay.
was
Yeah,
very
it's really great. All right, we now have 45 seconds.
On the next agenda.
Okay. All right, so. All right, so we now have 30 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting for tonight. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Flexibility.
And we got through almost the entire agenda.
Amazing.
Two small things that we did not get to, so thank you, everyone. Brent, again, thank you. Always nice to see your face. Yeah.